call the roll, please.
Yes, roll call. Commissioner Shirazi,
Here.
Commissioner Lamone,
Here.
Commissioner Sagru,
Here.
Commissioner Rank,
Here.
Vice Chair Fern,
Here.
and Chair Manis.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Secretary Payne, would you share the rules of conduct for the hearing, please?
Yes, and they're going to be slightly different from our standard rules, so please listen carefully if you are a regular attendee at Planning Commission. Good afternoon, community members, and welcome to the January 19th, 2022 Special Planning Commission meeting of the City of Oakland. This meeting is being hosted on a Zoom webinar platform that allows attendees to raise a virtual hand to speak. The Planning Commission agenda for this meeting includes instructions for how to raise and lower your hand on this platform, and the agenda is available on the city's website. At this point, we ask all attendees to lower your virtual hands and only raise them when the item you're interested in speaking on is called and not before. If you're calling in from a phone and wish to comment, press *9 to engage the raise your hand feature and *6 to unmute yourself. The meeting platform will keep track of the order in which hands are raised. Each speaker will have a maximum of 2 minutes to speak, and time cannot be ceded from one speaker to another. When it is your turn to speak, the city will call on you by your Zoom handle, unmute you, and you will unmute yourself on your own device to begin speaking. Please then identify yourself by your given name at the beginning of your comment. For this meeting, we expect a large number of speakers. With this in mind, based on direction from the chair, the timer for each public commenter will sound at 1 minute and 45 seconds. This is your prompt to complete your comment, as we will mute you without further warning at 2 minutes. Again, the timer will sound at 1 minute and 45 seconds, and we will mute you at 2 minutes. Once you've completed your comment or your 2-minute allowance has passed, the city will again mute you, and you won't be able to speak again on that item unless the commission so chooses. We'll call each item in turn. This meeting is being recorded by KTOP and will be available on the city's website following the meeting. Additionally, upon approval, minutes are posted on the city's website. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the thoroughness. And this hearing is obviously going to be different than many that we've had. Let's move on to the commission business. First item on commission business, any discussion on the agenda?
None from the secretary.
Okay. Any director's report?
Not today.
And informational reports?
No information reports today.
I don't believe we've had any committee meetings since, commissioners. No, I don't believe so.
No committee reports since last week.
Okay, and then any commission matters? No commission matters. And then city attorney's report, please.
Good afternoon, City Planning Commissioners. Brian Mulry from the City Attorney's Office. There's no city attorney report.
Okay, thank you both for that. Okay, so then let us move on to the open forum section of our hearing. Just remind those people who are interested in speaking in open forum to please raise your hand. And with that said, open forum cannot involve any discussion regarding the item on the calendar today. So if you are interested in speaking on this item, we will share that, and you can raise your hand, and Desmona will take you in order.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Secretary Payne, anything to ask? Anything additional?
Just a reminder that open forum is for items not on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Our first speaker will come from, looks like a Garcia. If you could please state your full name for the record. And I'm sorry, you do need to unmute yourself. Okay, looks like we had a change in the lineup here, so let's try this. Our next speaker, is it Rasheeda Foster? You may unmute yourself to make your comment.
Not ready yet.
You're not, okay, so we're gonna go ahead and lower your hand, and you can raise your hand when you're ready to speak.
Okay.
Next, Asada, please state your full name for the record.
My name is Asada Oligbala. I was calling because did this commission have any involvement with the tiny homes that were placed at 12th and 2nd? Those homes have some violations. There is an encampment act that says any in homeless encampment has to be 100 feet from any school. That encampment has a site that is right on the fence of Dewey. That encampment has residents building a kitchen and a community meeting site on the Union Park side with no permits or code enforcement. That community has a fence that divides two encampment sites by race. One site, the Union Park, is 99% white. The other side, which is run by the consortium of the East Bay, has a diverse community. My major concern is they have showers. They don't have running water on the side that is run by the consortium. They do not have sewer opportunity. They're going to put it up there, but it's been like that for 2 months with no sewer. They have porta potties. I can't believe how this facility is in place with so many violations. And the people who are building the kitchen said the city told them they didn't need permits to build that kitchen. These are the homeless people building their own kitchen on city property, which is the 12th Street property.
Asada, that is your 2-minute time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I do have, it looks like West Oakland Cultural. If you could please state your full name for the record. And I will give you a 15-second warning before we end the timer.
Thank you. My name is David Peters. I am the president of the West Oakland Cultural Action Network. I've come before this commission several times in the past, including, I believe, at your final meeting before the holiday break. And at that meeting, I posed this question, in which, ironically enough, I was just talking about with another of my neighbors today at lunch, is how does this community along the San Pablo corridor, simply from 580 to West Grand, influence, impact, guide the development that's happening along the San Pablo corridor and the uses that are allowed and permitted there? There are some plans that we've become aware of for some development that's occurring that is not supported by the community. And most importantly, is the community is not even notified of. And so, as community members, we don't know how to understand, how to interact with the planning commission, the city, and the bureaucracy, and it has tremendous impact over our lives. And so, trying to understand how, just as residents and neighbors, how do we become a part of this process and influence and guide development along San Pablo corridor where we live?
Thank you for your comment. And next, I have a caller. The last 4 digits are 9932. If you could please state your full name for the record.
Hello, my name is Nino Parker. I'm a homeless Black advocate at Lake Merritt. I've lived around the lake as a homeless resident at several places, including Snow Park. I'd just like to piggyback on what Mr. Sada Olabaga was talking about. I've been protesting at this Lakeview Tiny Homes encampment for the last 2 months because of a fence that goes down the middle of it, separating people from Alameda and Oaklanders, which are geographically entitled to those other tiny homes on the Alameda side. But what we have going on here is inequality. A man died during the Martin Luther King weekend on the Oakland side of the tiny homes Lakeview encampment. although he was outside of the encampment, but in a tent, he laid there for 3 weeks. It's so sad, the inequity to have Alameda side with satellite dishes, cameras, and able to build a kitchen with whoever. I hope the Planning Commission didn't allow them to have a fence down the middle, knowing that it's 99% white on one side. It's very discriminatory. There was an article in the East Bay Times, if you'd like to do a follow-up, although it was biased for the Union Point Park people. I will be there protesting until they take that fence down. It is discriminatory, and in 2021, we should not have a fence separating Black folks and white or mixed folks from one side and people from Alameda on the other side that are predominantly white with more advantages. They are self-governed, while the other side is controlled by the housing consortium of the East Bay and a security guard. All fairness, if it's one encampment, there should not be a fence in the middle of it separating white folks from Black folks on Martin Luther King holiday weekend that just passed. Let's do something about that. We deserve better. With these last 45 seconds, the man's name was Tone. Okay, the man's name was Tone that passed away. I don't want it to go forgotten. I knew him from Snow Park. I started that encampment in 2018 at the Tiny Homes Village. It was just a site for seniors. Appreciate your time. Have a wonderful day. Please look into this. A fence separating a white community and a Black community in Oakland in 2021.
Thank you for your comment. Next, I have Willie Stevens. Please unmute yourself to make your comment.
I gotta say, when you look at the
I wanted to comment on the
Willie, we are hearing a lot of background from you. Can you turn down your background noise?
And getting hit over people who may be suffering CTE.
I wanted to comment on the Howard terminal issue. Can I do that at this time, or do I have to wait?
You may make your comment.
Okay.
Is this for Howard Terminal? I'm sorry.
Mr. Stevens, if you're asking about Howard Terminal, that item will come up on our calendar later.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so our next comment is from Oscar. Please state your full name for the record.
Hi. As a member of the public and a resident of Oakland, I'd like to request a couple of things that are for transparency and totally in the purview of the commission to grant. First of all, I think commission members who are affiliated with organizations or work for organizations that may benefit in one way or the other or advocate for the project should identify themselves as such. Mr. Segru as sheet metal workers' political representative, and I assume that organization is also involved with the Alameda County Building Trades. You work for an organization that will benefit from Howard Terminal should this E.I.R be certified by the council. And Ms. Rank, you are on the board of an organization that advocates development in the Bay Area. So you should probably identify yourselves in the interest of transparency and fairness to the public. I don't know all of the rest of you or have time, because I'd also like to request that when there is public comment, the facilitator let the public know how many commenters there are and how far deep they are into the commentary, and be able to give commenters some idea of when they should expect to be called, maybe call the next 3 or 4 names, so people know that they're not right up, so they can go to the bathroom, get some water, make sure that they can take a coffee break from work to make their comment, all the things. This is a meeting at 3 p.m. in the middle of the day. So at least to the second, I've already identified 2 of the commissioners. I think you should always do that, especially because the Planning Commission makes decisions about development, which you both are involved in organizations that benefit from it. I think you are also, Mr. Mann, as an architect. So that would be great in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Jean. Please unmute yourself and state your full name for the record. Jean, I have Jean Kwan. Are you there? I am still showing that
Oh.
there you are. Hi.
Sorry. His recommendation of letting us know how many speakers there would be is a good one. I expected you'd have millions, so I'm surprised to be called so quickly. Let me just say, I helped start this process a long time ago when I was mayor, and it's gone through a lot of.
Ms. Kwan, if you're talking about Howard Terminal, that item has not been heard yet on the calendar's open forum section.
Is this not on Howard Terminal?
That item will be called after we go through the next several items on the calendar. It's not come up yet.
I'm so sorry. I couldn't tell because you don't have the schedule like they do for the city council to let us know where you are at. So I will lower my hand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next comment comes from a caller. Wait 1 second. Caller, and the last 4 digits are 0794. Please state your full name for the record.
Hello.
Hi.
Yes. I just want to comment.
I'm sorry,
on
can you
Howard.
state your name?
My name is Mrs. Cecilia Cunningham.
Mrs. Cunningham, if you're going to be talking about Howard Terminal, that item will come up after we go through several more items.
Okay. All right.
Thank
Don't
you.
forget.
Let's see. So I do see Jerry Campbell, you've already made a comment. And also Willie Stevens. Did you want to make a comment on something that's not related to Howard Terminal, Willie?
No, I want to talk on Howard's Terminal.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
We'll be calling that item shortly here.
All right.
And it looks like Rasheeda Foster. Okay, Rasheeda, you may unmute yourself to make your comment. Rasheeda, are you there? You are still muted.
Hello, yes.
You can go ahead and make your comment.
Okay, from my understanding, this meeting was for the A's, the Oakland A's, and where they're going to be located in the air quality. Is that what this meeting is about?
Ms. Foster, that item will come up on the calendar in a bit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next hand is from Howard Eggman. You could.
And I would point out this is our last open forum speaker at this time with the hand raised.
Okay, Howard, you can go ahead and unmute yourself to make your comment.
I'm going to speak on my terminal named after me. So just pass me by.
Okay.
It's nice to have a terminal named after you.
I'm gonna go ahead and lower your hand, and you can raise it after when the item is called.
Okay, any other speakers regarding open forum, meaning that there's nothing that you're going to be speaking on with regard to the calendaring today? So if that's the case, and Desmond, I don't see any of your hands, perhaps we can move on to the consent calendar.
On your consent calendar, you have one item, and you may discuss and or take a motion.
Okay. Any discussion? I know we've had this before us. Do we have a motion on this item?
I move to approve.
Second.
Okay, that was a first by Commissioner Fern, I believe a second by Commissioner Rank.
Correct.
Okay, and I will call roll. Commissioner Shirazi?
Yes.
Commissioner Lamont?
Yes.
Commissioner Shagru?
Yes.
Commissioner Rank?
Yes.
Vice Chair Fern?
Yes.
And Chair Manis?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, wonderful. perhaps Secretary Payne, you could give people the scorecard and how many attendees we have for this hearing.
Apologies, I'm just looking for my Zoom icon. We have 201 attendees at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. A large body. Okay, so with that, let us then proceed with our public hearing. And we have one item on the calendar, correct?
Yes, this is item number 2 on the Planning Commission agenda. This is Howard Terminal at the Port of Oakland, 1 Market Street. And the case file, in case people are monitoring for when to speak, is E.I.R 18016. And Chair Manis, before city staff speaks on this, did you want to have a discussion?
Yes, I would. So thanks for opening that part of the hearing. So let me share some of my thoughts as we proceed today. So before we start and hear staff presentation and project sponsor, I want us to address the question of a continuance. We've heard a lot of people submit requests before the hearing, and whether we should continue this hearing is really our purview. And I wanted to have the commission sort of weigh in and basically address this issue. And Pete, any insight on us proceeding with this discussion and action as we move forward in the hearing?
Yeah, Pete Volden, City of Oakland, Bureau of Planning staff. So as you're aware, we did receive a number of inquiries and comments requesting that we postpone the hearing on this to provide more time for review and comment. We've been providing responses after a discussion with Ed Manassi, who is the city's environmental review officer, and Bill Gilchrist, who's the director of the Planning and Building Department. We're not inclined to postpone the hearing. The reasons for that are that by publishing in mid-December, we provided substantially more notice than is legally required. Typically for Planning Commission hearings, under non-COVID procedures, it'd be 17 days. We provided about twice that, the legal requirement being 10 days after publishing a final E.I.R prior to actual certification, which for this hearing would include 30 days. Furthermore, in this instance, the purview of the E.I.R certification is actually the decision-making body in this case is going to be the City Council. It's anticipated that this item would proceed to City Council in mid-February sometime. That's still yet to be determined. We need to go to rules first for that scheduling. But even with a mid-February hearing, that would still end up being approximately 60 days of public notice from the publishing of the document to the actual hearing on certification, which is actually 6 times the required notice. Further, just touching on the E.I.R process in general, the public notice period that we're in right now is not like the public notice period that was provided for the draft E.I.R back earlier this year. Under that process, that's where the public gets to have the comment period to submit comments on the content of the draft E.I.R. And then the city then takes those comments and provides a response to them. So this document right now is actually the final E.I.R and the response to comments document. So at this point, what we're really providing is our responses to all of those comments that we received. And that was the justification that we had provided for not postponing the hearing.
Thanks very much, Pete. Commissioners, do you have any questions of Pete regarding the staff's determination or at least recommendation on that item? Okay, Vice Chair Fern.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. So just to make sure I'm kind of understanding kind of the process, because there have been, a lot of concerns that the E.I.R, doesn't cover, certain things around, plans around environmental remediation, things of that nature. So it seems that what this hearing is a little bit different because the entitlements of the project approvals are in a separate hearing. Is that correct? Will be seen in a separate hearing or heard in a separate hearing.
Yeah, again, Pete Bowman from city staff. Yeah, so this process is unique to other projects that typically come before this body or the city council. And the E.I.R is actually being bifurcated out from the project entitlements. And the reason for that is that the project site actually sits within both the Port of Oakland jurisdiction as well as the city jurisdiction. So when the E.I.R certification proceeds to the city council for consideration, the first project approval or project related approval needs to be an ordinance addressing the issues under the city charter to provide for joint jurisdictional authority over the site. And this was contemplated in, and I'll get into this in the presentation later too to further explain the process, but this was contemplated in both the Port Board resolutions on the term sheet as well as city council resolution in 2020 for the city and port to enter into an MOU to process those applications. However, no action on those applications can take place until that ordinance is adopted, and that ordinance also requires certification of the E.I.R, and that's what's necessitating the bifurcation of the process. However, the entitlement submittals will still return in the event that this continues to proceed. Those applications which have been filed will return to this body, Planning Commission, for review and comment on the merits of the project for recommendation to the city council.
Got it, thanks. So to kind of just follow up on that, some of these items will necessarily need to be dealt with through the development agreement that the applicant is pursuing with the city. Is that right? And that's also separate from what we're necessarily working with today about the E.I.R.
Yeah, so I'm not sure specifically which items, but there has been a development application filed, and that will proceed in step with all of the application entitlements that have been filed with the Bureau of Planning.
Yeah, I'm talking about things around, determinations on affordable housing, the environmental remediation plan, like those things are kind of to be determined in the final DA and entitlements for the project. Is that generally right?
Yeah, so the affordable housing agreement, that'll all be part of the development agreement. And there was a preliminary proposal put forward in the non-binding term sheet that the city council adopted back in July. The remediation of the site, that'll be under the purview of DTSC with the state.
Got it. Okay, and so related to the E.I.R, the Planning Commission is not an approval body in this sense, which is a little different than typical. So we are recommending a certification. We are not certifying today. We are recommending or not recommending certification to council. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I don't have any further questions, Chair.
Okay. Commissioners, other questions? Commissioner Shirazi.
Thank you. I think this background is very helpful, and I think it might be helpful as well to just a little more on the process for the E.I.R. I think that the purpose is really clear, but just because we have over 200 people, I imagine some of them have not interacted with the CEQA process before, and even those of us who have, it's very complicated. So if we could just have some level setting on sort of the steps and maybe, how long the draft was open, what the response in the final is supposed to capture, just some basic information, if you don't mind.
So Commissioner Shirazi, you're right on. So I've asked Pete that he do that as a part of his presentation when he starts the project, in order to be clear about what the issues are, the other agencies, to exactly your point. So yes, we are certainly prepared to make sure that we help people understand this complicated process.
Of course, I should have known that. Thank you.
No problem. No, good to ask. Thank you. Commissioners, other questions? I have one, Pete. So just to Vice Chair Fern's query, because it's really very different than commissions usually do, is that there's no project before us. We're basically looking at something that's a theoretical maximum, and the project could be very different in its ultimate path back through the city if this document is certified. Am I correct in that? And that's a real big differentiator in the way we are looking at this document?
Yeah, and that, this is also proceeding right now for, purely for the certification purposes, and this hearing is not tied to any project approvals. Those are currently on file with the Bureau of Planning or in consideration of the City Port Jurisdictional Authority Ordinance, and that, since that lies purely within the Oakland City Charter, which the Commission does not have purview. So that matter is solely under the discretion of the City Council and not the Planning Commission, and that's why that item is not before you today.
Great, thank you for that clarity. Okay, so with that, commissioners, I'd like to seek a motion on this request now. We want to really ensure that speakers can allocate their time, particularly since there's so many on the substantive comments of the final E.I.R. So is anybody prepared to make a motion with regard to this issue?
So I'll jump in, Chair Manis. For the folks out in the attendees attending today, I do want to first just say we certainly have received the commentary. We've had discussions with some of you, and part of the reason why we're having these questions to staff is to really kind of understand and hopefully describe what we're actually doing today, because as Commissioner Sarazi mentioned, these CEQA processes are very, very, very complex and nuanced. And so, given what I've heard, and I understand that, folks feel like the E.I.R may be incomplete at this time, but related to a continuance, I think given what I've heard from staff and what they've explained and kind of what I've weighed and understanding of how the CEQA process works, I'd like to make a motion to move to that the Planning Commission not continue this hearing today, and we make a decision on whether to recommend or not recommend the E.I.R move forward to the City Council for certification.
I'll second.
Second.
I believe I heard it first from Commissioner Rank. And so I have a first from Commissioner Fern and a second from Commissioner Rank. And the roll call is Commissioner Shirazi,
Yes.
Commissioner Lamone,
Yes.
Commissioner Segura,
Yes.
Commissioner Rank,
Yes.
Commissioner Fern,
Yes.
and Chair Manis.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. This item will be heard today.
Okay, thank you
And
very
with
much. Go ahead.
apologies, with that, would you like me to now introduce the item?
I would love you to introduce the item and give folks a scorecard on how many attendees there are. And again, perhaps as a part of it, remind them of the need for timely comments, since there's a lot of people who are going to want to speak.
I apologize. I've lost my participant screen for a moment. Here we go. We currently have 227 attendees at the meeting. And I started to introduce the item. This is item number 2 on the agenda, Howard Terminal. And this is to consider a recommendation of certification of the final E.I.R to the City Council. And the case planner for this is Pete Volman. And as noted before, we would like to remind the audience that the item before the Planning Commission is specifically the final E.I.R, and it is not to certify the final E.I.R, as that will be within the City Council's purview. It's to forward a recommendation regarding whether or not to certify the final E.I.R from the Planning Commission. And with that, Pete, I believe, has a presentation. Pete?
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Pete Bowman, Bureau of Planning staff again. As noted, this is the hearing for the final E.I.R of the Waterfront Ballpark District project. As also mentioned, this hearing is not intended for input or discussion on the merits of the project. As I also mentioned earlier, future hearings will be held before the Planning Commission on the file development applications, which I'll discuss in more detail shortly. The project site encompasses approximately 55 acres, including the Howard Terminal property at the port. Proposal includes a new Major League ballpark that'll seat up to 35,000 individuals. And it also includes adjacent mixed-use development that would include up to 3,000 housing units, 1.5 million square feet of office, 270,000 square feet of retail, 400 hotel rooms, a performance venue with capacity of up to 3,500 individuals, and approximately 18.3 acres of publicly accessible open space. The proposal included a study for a maritime reservation scenario, in which I will show here momentarily, which was studied as a alternate site plan or alternate reduced site area consistent with the term sheet approved by the port. This is in which the port may terminate approximately 10 acres in order to accommodate a future expanding curing basin. And one point I just wanted to clarify, and receiving a lot of comments on the draft E.I.R, there may have been some confusion to this. The maritime reservation scenario is not the turning base project itself. The purpose of that is because if the port takes back that maximum of 10 acres or something in between, the intent of including this within the E.I.R was to demonstrate any other potential impacts that would result of the same development program pushed within to a smaller project site and what that would look like. The Turning Basin project will be a completely separate project that the port is independently pursuing at this point in time. They've got studies ongoing with the Army Corps of Engineers as we speak. And the resulting site area could be anything from up to the 10 acres to potentially much less. So this is really just demonstrating what that maximum take would be. And then if it's less, then it would be redistributed across a larger site than is shown in the image before you. Project description also included two potential, what were referred to as project variants. And that included an aerial gondola, which would connect down Washington Street between the convention center down to Jack London Square along Washington. That at this point in time, there is no application that has been filed for this. This continues to just be a potential project that the A's could pursue down the road. The other variant was what was referred to as the peaker plant variant. And this is the power plant facility that's currently on the site, both the building and the tank site. And under that scenario, the peaker plant structure could be converted into a battery storage facility, and a portion of the western wing would be trimmed back in order to provide a greater space for Athletics Way as it proceeds up Water Street into Athletics Way and circling the ballpark. At this point in time, the A's do not have site control over that property, and that's why it's still considered only a project variant and not part of the project. So back to the focus of this hearing is to receive a recommendation from the Planning Commission to the City Council on certification of the E.I.R, and that's going to be based upon the certification findings attached to the staff report. Given no project approvals are before the Planning Commission, the additional CEQA findings required for project approvals will be included for consideration by the City Council at the hearing for the E.I.R certification, along with the ordinance for the shared jurisdictional authority between the city and port, being that that would be the first project-related approval. The legislation to be considered by City Council is pursuant to the city charter, which is why this matter is not within the purview of the Planning Commission, as I discussed previously. Just to touch on the project entitlement process, if I can back out here real quick.
And Pete, to Commissioner Shirazi's question as well, please go slow on this process. This is very complex and there's a lot of moving parts. You know it exceptionally well. So thanks for the graphic and keep going.
Hopefully I'm pacing myself. So as previously mentioned, the project side is within both the city and port jurisdiction, which necessitates the legislation for the shared regulatory authority. As I'd also mentioned earlier, this was anticipated in the board resolution approving the term sheet with the A's, which is shown on this visual, which occurred back in 2019, I believe. The E&A that was entered into was back in 2018. Further, in January 2020, the City Council approved a resolution to execute a non-binding MOU between the city and Port. This allowed the city to accept and begin review of the development applications under the planning code. Currently, the filed applications include a plan unit development, which includes a preliminary development plan and the related design guidelines. That actually appeared before the Planning Commission the Design Review Committee of the Planning Commission for comments earlier this year as well. The filings also include a tentative track map and a development agreement. And this is in addition to the required general plan amendment and rezoning. As I'd mentioned, no actions on these applications can occur until the adoption of the legislation for the shared regulatory authority. And this is why the entitlements are being bifurcated from the E.I.R certification process. As mentioned, the development applications will appear before the Planning Commission at a future date. And this will be the time to discuss the project merits on everything within those applications. And it'll be before the Planning Commission for recommendation to the City Council, who is also the decision-making body in that case as well. Concurrently, the Port is also reviewing the Port building permit, sometimes referred to as a Port permit or Port development permit. That's been filed with the Port, and no action on that can take place at this time as well. So that's still pending. Port will also be responsible for consideration of a trust settlement exchange agreement, as well as an option agreement related real estate transaction documents. This is where what a lot of folks talk about with the Seaport compatibility measures. That's the document that those measures would be attached to. In addition to the city and Port approvals, the project will also require approvals from other state agencies, including BCDC, State Lands Commission, DTSC, as well as CPUC for any railroad crossings that have been discussed in the mitigation measures within the draft E.I.R and the E.I.R document. Bringing back to the E.I.R process, just to go through the timeline of events, the A's had filed for the request for environmental review back in late 2018. Shortly after that, the city issued the notice of preparation, or NOP. This began the comment period for determining the scope of the E.I.R. During this public comment period, there were scoping sessions held between both the Landmarks Preservation Advisory Board and the Planning Commission. The E.I.R document was also prepared pursuant to AB 734, which is state legislation adopted for this project. That process set forth specific project requirements, including but not limited to project achieving no net new greenhouse gas emissions, as well as processing requirements. This also, the benefit to the A's in this matter, why they pursued this, was because it provides a timeline limitation on any legal challenges on the environmental document. However, it doesn't address timelines for our review of these, of the document. The draft E.I.R was published in February of 2021. Per the AB 734 process requirements, the city held a public workshop, and this was in March of 2021. And the purpose of this was to walk through all the key findings of the draft E.I.R. So we held this on a Saturday, and it was included as part of the notice availability for the document so that people could attend. If I recall, I think there may have been approximately 200 attendees for that. Once again, that was to walk through the key findings of the draft environmental document and really to kind of explain where to find information within that document to assist folks in finding information, providing public comments. The comment period for the draft E.I.R was also extended out to 60 days, and hearings were held before both the Landmarks Board and the Planning Commission. The draft E.I.R identified a number of significant and unavoidable impacts on wind within the aesthetics chapter, air quality, cultural resources, noise, and transportation related to the level of service on Caltrans segments. The draft E.I.R The draft E.I.R also identified project alternatives that would reduce impacts. Some of these were to less than some of these were to less than significant, and some were just reducing but not completely eliminating those impacts. The alternatives that were included beyond the no project alternative, which is a requirement under CEQA, included the offsite alternative at the Coliseum site, the project as proposed, but with a grade separation. And this is a vehicular grade separation connecting to the site, as well as a reduced project alternative that included the same site plan area, but reduced the amount of development that would be going into that. And that was primarily focused on the target of reducing the air quality impacts associated. During the draft E.I.R comment period, including all the public hearings that we held on it, the city received in excess of 400 comments. The city then prepared the response to comments and final E.I.R, which was published in December of last year, or just last month, December 17th. The document provides responses to all the 400 plus comments that were received. The document also includes a chapter that has 23 consolidated responses to a number of frequently raised topics. Finally, E.I.R provided updated project information, which included but not limited to an update to the description of the affordable housing program, which was consistent with the adopted city council term sheet. Also, a change in the description of the remediation process with DTSC to a RAP from a RAW. And the difference of the two processes is really more just related to process. A RAP is required when a cleanup estimate exceeds a certain dollar amount, and it also has more public participation and notice involved than that of a RAW. It also identified modification to the peaker plant variant, where initially there was a proposal as part of that project variant to remove portions of both wings of the building. At this point, that was updated where it will only remove a portion of only the western wing, and it would not modify any other portion of the facility. Finally, E.I.R included approximately 300 pages of updates to the draft E.I.R, which included updates to the air quality mitigations in response to comments received, including CARB and the Air District. It expanded the explanation of the required site remediation process. And it also included updates to the rail safety mitigation, which expanded the at-grade crossing improvements that were proposed from the mitigation, which previously stopped at Broadway from the project site, and extended those improvements all the way west to Oak Street. The final E.I.R also included a draft MMRP in the appendix, and that's a mitigation monitoring reporting plan. This is just a draft at this point. And the final E.I.R did not include significant new information that required recirculation. So I'll go ahead and conclude with the presentation, and staff is requesting that the commission move the item forward to City Council with a recommendation to certify the E.I.R based upon the certification findings included in section 6 of attachment A to the staff report. And before I hand it back, I just did want to note that since there's no project approvals before the commission today, the applicant will not be giving a presentation. However, I do believe that Dave Caffel is present to represent on the A's behalf, and I believe he would like to speak just very shortly on the item. Also to note that there are representatives from ESA, who are the city's environmental consultants on the project. And as questions arise later, we may turn to them for more technical matters for a response. Thank you.
Okay, Pete, wonderful. Thanks as always. Commissioners, do we have any questions of Pete on any of the material that he shared with us before we ask the A's provide some opening comments? Commissioner Rank.
Through the chair, can I wait till after the A's presentation and then we'll have questions after that?
Most certainly.
Okay.
Then let's proceed.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm looking, the representative for the A's that will be speaking is
I've actually found him, and I believe that I've allowed him to talk.
Excellent.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
so Dave, if you want to go ahead and unmute, you can go ahead and speak.
Yeah, definitely. Pete, thanks so much. I want to thank the entire Planning Commission, the city staff for all the hard work that's gone into getting to this point. Obviously, it's been almost 2 years of working on the environmental impact report, a report that has taken a great deal of time, but it's a very big project and one that requires a lot of thoughtfulness in its approach. So we're here today to ensure that the Planning Commission feels that the document is done in an appropriate way. We're here to answer any questions on its development and us as the project sponsor. And we just want to ensure that it's done in the utmost transparency and openness so we can move forward with this really transformative project at the waterfront. We're talking about billions of dollars in private capital, really reimagining the Oakland waterfront, ensuring that the A's are going to stay in Oakland for many generations to come, and creating a new neighborhood and enhancing the quality of life for the people who live in that part of the city right now. So those are all the positive attributes of this project. You know, obviously tens of thousands of new jobs, better air quality, a better situation for really everyone involved. And we're excited to move it forward and actually get it to the city council for a binding vote this year as soon as possible. So I'm here to answer any questions if you guys have them, and a resource throughout the entire meeting. So thank you guys so much for your time and thoughtfulness.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Kowal. So Commissioner Rank, let me then go back to you. You had some questions, I believe, of staff or others.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, I know we have sort of a narrow CEQA focus today, but I did have a couple of maybe process or timing questions, and these will probably go to Pete. Is there a moment in time moving forward when the gondola variant has to be decided upon, or a trigger has to be pulled? I mean, I know that's sort of been stated as being a possibility, but I'm wondering if there's sort of a moment when that decision has to be made.
Yeah, so the E.I.R was provided in a way that can provide, potential clearance for it. The details of any such proposal are quite limited. There are mitigations in there because there were impacts associated with it, and those are also identified as being significant and unavoidable. The gondola, as mentioned, travels over the old Oakland Historic District and has impacts there. There is a mitigation that requires that it be of a minimum footprint possible, and that review would come through the city. In terms of a timeline, though, I don't know that there would particularly be a timeline. I mean, typically E.I.Rs can sit on a shelf for a while and still be valid, but I would imagine with any future gondola proposal, we would need to take whatever submitted and take a look at that for consistency with not just the mitigation, but also all the other studies that have been done in this E.I.R, because the details were probably more limited than the rest of the scope of the project.
Okay, so not really. I mean, it's really a to be continued. But it's just covered in the analysis.
That's correct.
Okay, another sort of big picture timing question that we probably don't know the answer to, but I feel like I need to ask it. I mean, there's a lot of outside responsible agencies that have to weigh in here. And I know the staff report basically said that it can happen sort of concurrently or subsequent to the certification, and just knowing what I know about those various agencies, is there, assuming that everything went smoothly, I mean, can anyone kind of pinpoint a moment in time when a shovel might hit the ground?
In terms of the development, that's a good question. Yeah, so with the other project approval requirements from the other agencies, all of those need to be in place prior to them putting a shovel in the ground. So I can't even begin to pick an actual date. I mean, we did put dates forward in the E.I.R, and those were done so to be very conservative and had a very advanced construction time frame. And the intent of that was to sort of look at the worst case scenario to really be able to kind of, look at what would the worst case impacts be so that we're making sure that everything's covered. Let's see, Dave Cabell's turned on his.
Yeah, so So I
Cameron,
mean,
you might have something to say about the.
Yeah, Pete, I think
Couple
one other
more.
point there is the litigation timeline. You know, we have the AB 734 legislation that we passed at the state level in 2018, and that limits the lawsuit's adjudication to 270 days. So that allows a little more certainty in terms of like when you could actually get a shovel in the ground, probably within a year of actually getting the final approvals. Other projects of this scale that don't have that type of legislation, it can take 3 to 5 years. And that was one of the reasons we pursued that, as well as the additional environmental sustainability measures that come with that legislation.
Thanks. I think that's all I've got for now.
My fellow commissioners, any other questions of Pete? Okay, seeing none. Okay, so we are going to open this up to public comment, and I want to preface this by some management of speakers with Desmona and Secretary Payne and myself. So we are currently showing that there are 34, it's growing a little bit, 35 hands raised. And we want to certainly hear everybody, but I think several speakers were very sensitive to making sure that they could be available for the time that they want to speak, and we're up to 44 now. So with that said, we are going to, Desmona will be calling 5 speakers names at a time. You need to be prepared to be able to move on. Desmona will again provide you the guidance on the 2 minutes that you have available, with another 15 seconds of warning before the 2 minutes is up. Before we do that, and it is just about 4 o'clock, all hands on this item who are prepared to speak on this item need to be raised by the time we arrive at 4:15 today, so that we can plan on that ahead. And I see 49 hands. So please raise your hands now earlier, but by 4:15, we will close the list off of people who are interested in testifying on this item.
And through the chair, if I might, apologies, this is Secretary Payne. At that 15-minute point, we will alert the attendee list so that anyone who has not raised their hand can take an opportunity over a period of a minute or two to raise their hands before we will announce who the last speaker is.
So I will reinforce that, Secretary Payne. 1 minute before the 15 minutes, we will tell you you have 1 minute left to raise your hand if you're interested in testifying this item. We're trying to valiantly be able to enable 50 people to testify on this item. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to you both, and for us to proceed.
Okay, if we are ready, we do have.
Oh, I'm sorry. I saw Commissioner Shirazi's hand. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just wondering if we could just remind folks of the rules of conduct, just because of some of the emails we got. I just want to make sure that we're really clear on what is appropriate to share and what's not, and what happens.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Shirazi. So with that said, Secretary Payne, would you do that again as it relates to the specific item on this calendar? I know many people have heard it. We want to make sure, again, thank you, Commissioner Shirazi, that we say it again and make sure that people don't feel like their public process is diminished.
Right, and just to be clear, we're not speaking to the rules of conduct for the Zoom hearing, but about this item specifically. This is a final E.I.R. and the Planning Commission is considering whether to recommend to City Council certification of a final E.I.R. This is not a hearing on the merits of the project, and it is not a hearing to certify the final E.I.R. And so, again, the Commission will be considering the question of whether to recommend certification only of the final E.I.R. to the City Council. And Pete, did you want to add anything to that or clarify before we start to take speakers?
No, I'm okay. Thanks.
Commissioner Shirazi, that covered it all? Anything else that we missed?
I think that's good. I guess the only other thing is, I do want to be clear that we won't, I know this has only happened once before, thankfully, but that if someone is hostile or incredibly inappropriate, we will mute them and cut them off. I think that's what I was trying to get at.
Agreed. Okay, Desmona, you're in control.
And before Desmona starts, I'll note that we have 233 attendees and we have 50 hands raised at this moment. Desmona?
Okay, thank you very much. Our first comment will come from Tim Frank. I will go ahead and set the timer for 1 minute and 45 seconds, and you will have a 15-second warning to wrap up your comment. Thank you. Tim, you may go ahead and unmute yourself, and please state your full name for the record.
My name is Tim Frank, and I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Sustainable Neighborhoods, and I can keep my comments well under 2 minutes. I'd like to thank the Commission for its thoughtful deliberation so far. It's been a pleasure just to watch this meeting, and then seeing it conducted so professionally is a real pleasure. And I wanted to encourage you all to recommend the approval of the final E.I.R. by the Council. This is an unusually robust document, not surprising given the scope of the project that it covers, but it is a very thorough examination of the environmental issues. And we think that both the E.I.R. and the project itself under consideration are worthy and something that we'd be very happy to support. So we encourage you to recommend approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sonia, if you can please state your full name for the record.
Hello, my name is Sonia Caraval, and I am staff at eBase, the East Bay Alliance for Sustainable Economy, and we're a member of Oakland United. And I am here because we are very concerned about this E.I.R. We don't believe that it does enough to examine and mitigate the impacts this project will have on West Oakland, Chinatown, and future residents of Howard Terminal. In particular, the hazardous materials and air pollution impacts are not mitigated to the full extent possible. This 3,500-page E.I.R. was released a month ago, shortly before the holidays, and did not give the public enough time to analyze all of the many very important issues in this E.I.R. But that said, we were able to analyze and find that the air pollution and toxic substances issues at least raised concern for us, and there may be more. So the Howard Terminal site is full of dangerous toxic substances, so many that currently it is illegal to build housing there because it would be too hazardous to people's health. It is not safe for families or children. This is part of a long legacy of environmental racism in Oakland that has left West Oakland residents and workers bearing the brunt of air pollution, higher asthma risk, and toxic waste. We know that this site has petroleum, lead, and other toxic materials under a concrete cap, which will be disturbed, endangering workers and future residents. And the E.I.R. does not specify which chemicals will be cleaned up before construction, simply saying that it will be cleaned up with a remedial action plan according to DTSC guidelines. Before certifying this E.I.R., we deserve to see a plan that details exactly how the A's will make this site safe before they build housing on it, where children, expecting mothers, and disabled people could get sick from exposure to toxic substances. And that plan needs to include community input. The other issue I wanted to raise really quickly is air pollution.
15 seconds.
The West Oakland Community Action Plan, in which the Bay Area BAAQMD partnered with WOEP, has many great suggestions, and yet this E.I.R. only takes some of them as mitigations, despite the fact that they say that the air quality impact will be significant and unavoidable. The A should do everything in their power to reduce air quality impacts of this project.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, I will be calling the next 5 speakers. I do have someone from the West Oakland Cultural Action Network, Glenn Laval, S.J. Garcia, Cheryl Walton, and Liz Ortega. Go ahead, West Oakland Cultural.
This is David Peters again. And actually, when I asked that question at the last meeting, you guys said come to the next meeting and have an answer. So I think there's a different topic here today, so I won't press that. I'm here today also as a member of West Oakland Benefits for Equity. We are a grassroots, we're just a group of West Oakland residents who've been meeting for the last couple of years to try and educate ourselves about this project and its impact. So we live here and have been quite invested in this process, and I've dedicated a couple of years to gain, getting more knowledge. Also, was sat on the Howard Terminal Community Benefits Agreement Steering Committee as the co-chair of the History and Culture topic cohort, and I'm the founder of the Black Liberation Walking Tour. And I think that the EIR was incredibly robust. So I learned a lot about this project there, although the environmental stuff was beyond me, but it addressed many, many other things about truck parking and traffic management, and those were interesting. But I'm here today because I do not believe the current EIR provides a sufficient basis for you to recommend this project to move forward to the city council. Specifically, under the fast track AB 734 legislation, there's a requirement that it be subject to a comprehensive community benefits agreement, and that is in section 21168.6.7a.5. We have heard from representatives of the Oakland Athletics that they are opposed to, they have not committed to affordable housing. They have not committed to any of the financing plans for the community fund. And I do not believe that that has been addressed in the EIR. And matter of fact,
to wrap up your comment.
Thank you. Matter of fact, the EIR has said the CBA is outside of CEQA. AB 734 specifically brings the CBA into CEQA. And so for that reason, I think this EIR must be sent back to include an analysis of CBA under CEQA.
Thank you for your comment. Glenn Laval, please state your full name for the record.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good evening, commission members and members of the public, or good late afternoon. My name is Glenn Lovell, a representative of Ironworkers Union Local 378, representing members across the city of Oakland. Wanted to thank the commission and staff for the really in-depth and thorough reports and research done on this EIR. And of course, as iterated in the earlier comments, we are looking on those merits of the recommendation to certify this EIR and continue this process. With all of the really in-depth and important work that's been done here collectively to cover these bases here and the very in-depth analysis provided by the EIR, we do recommend that this commission recommend to the city to certify this EIR. It has covered the necessary territory, and the city and the broader public and stakeholders should all move forward in this process. Thank you for your time. Have a great evening.
Thank you. S.J. Garcia, please unmute yourself to make your 2-minute comment.
Hi there, good evening or good afternoon to the commission. I just want to recommend to you guys that you guys should move forward with the commission to recommend to the city council to certify the report. The last few speakers who oppose against the report probably should have taken the time to study and learn the analysis of this project. Some of us actually got our factual information from ABC7's Casey Pratt. And if people are willing to take the time to study it, learn it, understand it, then they could feel that that this project should move forward. Thank you for your guys' time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Cheryl, please state your full name for the record.
I'm Cheryl Walton, an East Oakland resident and the granddaughter, daughter, niece of longshoremen. My uncle, who just passed away at Christmas time, I was looking through his documents and saw that he's a longshoreman. He actually worked at the Howard Terminal. Thus, one of the main reasons I'm opposed to the A's developing at the Howard Terminal. They need to stay at the Coliseum where CEQA and E.I.R, the EIR, are already approved for redevelopment, and transportation are all in place. The FEIR confirms that the A's development will overwhelm and cause significant, unavoidable impacts to our working waterfront in the West Oakland neighborhoods. Yet, the final EIR fails to fully address many of the issues and concerns raised by our community. The FEIR is so incomplete that it concerns me that the city has glossed over the more than 400 comments which detail the draft EIR's inadequacies regarding transportation impacts, air quality, rail safety, hazardous materials, and seaport compatibility. Where is the transparency that Caval just mentioned? The seaport compatibility measures must be in place to protect the working waterfront and its workers from impacts of this development before the city council is presented with a final development agreement, infrastructure financing plans, and the FEIR. Yet no meaningful efforts have been made by the city or the A's to address seaport compatibility measures. Knowing that the FEIR is so insufficient and inadequately addresses the many impacts and risks to our city and residents, do not recommend certifying this half-baked final EIR to the city council, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along. Liz, go ahead and make your comment. Liz, please state your full name for the record.
Looks like you have Ty.
Yeah.
I was going to say, while we're waiting for
Ty.
Liz, somehow she got behind Ty.
1 second here. Yeah, we're moving around on the list as we lower hands and raise hands. So Ty, go ahead and make your comment.
And actually, why don't we take a pause here just to note, because we're having a little confusion about speakers, who the next 5 speakers are. Do you want me to go ahead and do that since
No,
we've...
I have that noted. I'm
Okay.
just trying to keep track of a lot of things here. Give me 1 second and I'm going to, we'll go back to Liz. Go ahead, Liz, and state your full name for the record.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now.
Okay.
I apologize.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Liz Ortega. I'm the Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Alameda Labor Council. I'm calling in to thank you today for all the work that you've done and asking for you to support the recommendation of moving this project forward. This EIR has been 2 years in the making and is one of the most comprehensive EIRs in history. This project is about good union jobs and community benefits, which is why we support. Thank you.
Thank you. And so next we will call the next 5 speakers. Will be Sherry Murphy, Margie Lewis, Building and Construction, John Raymond, and Shanna. Sherry, go ahead and
Desmona, hang on, Sherry, if you would. It's 4:15, I believe, Desmona. Right as I speak here, if you want to speak, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we will have all the speakers that will be speaking on this item today.
And after the next speaker, I'll note who the last speaker is.
Perfect. Thank you, Secretary.
Looks like, yeah, I have a last speaker as Rasheeda Foster. So we will go ahead and note that for right now. Give me 1 second.
We're back to, I think,
And
believe Sherry Murphy, right?
Yes, we are back to Sherry Murphy. Please state your full name for the record, Sherry.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Minister Sherry Murphy. I'm a resident of Oakland and I'm a member of Faith Alliance for a More Economy, which is an initiative of East Bay Alliance for a Sustainable Economy, EBASE. I'm also a member of Oakland United, and I'm asking you to do not make the recommendations to certify this EIR. Oakland United's initial review of the EIR does not adequately address many of the issues and concerns OU and other community stakeholders have raised. Questions about air quality, questions about exposure to toxic substances remain, and our concerns about housing and displacement were not deemed as environmental issues in their responses. This is an economic and just concern with a historical issue affecting vulnerable communities. Most of us who truly honor the work of Dr. Martin Luther King on Monday should understand that because we have laws and follow rules doesn't necessarily mean that they are just. Oakland United and other community groups have requested a postponement of the Planning Commission hearing and more time to review the final EIR, as it is such an extensive report, but the city has denied the request. Today, I ask this commission to have the moral courage to not certify this advancing in an EIR report that continues the generational trauma that is hurting us all, some more than others. The city must prioritize Oakland residents' health and safety over the profits of billionaire Fisher family. Please make sure this project is truly safe before moving forward. One that moves away from ineffective and corrupt systems toward a budget that invests in building alternative public safety. Thank you.
Thank you.
And at this point, I will note that the last speaker for this hearing will be Kenton, Rocket Block's team. Again, Kenton, Rocket Block's team will be the last speaker for this item. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Margie. Please unmute yourself to make your comment.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Margie Lewis. I'm an East Oakland resident and a member of many environmental groups, including CBE. First, I want to say do not recommend certification of this final EIR. The A's proposal will cause significant unavoidable impacts to our working waterfront in the West Oakland community. The FEIR is extremely incomplete and inadequate. It fails to mitigate and adequately address air quality, rail safety, hazardous materials, and more. According to the California Air Resource Board, the DEIR improperly defers mitigation to a future time in violation of CEQA because it does not provide adequate detail about how they will reduce the project's significant impact. Instead, the FEIR continues to defer the quantification of emissions and details of mitigation measures until just before construction begins, and this ignores input from a public agency charged with protecting the public good. Also, this project relies on the fast-track benefits of AB 734, a bill that was intended to support a project that was designed to improve air quality, yet the FEIR concludes that the project will create significant and unavoidable air quality impacts both during construction and during the life of the project, creating cumulative health risk impacts on sensitive populations. The EIR provides few details on the project's required toxic cleanup remediation action plan because it still has not been drafted. What details are included make it clear that the A's don't intend to clean up most of the site, but just to pave over and pile on the existing toxic pollution. And the Bay Area Air Quality Management, okay.
15 seconds. Thank you.
Okay, so please do not recommend this inadequate report.
Okay, building and construction, please state your full name for the record.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commission. My name is Eddie Escoto Alvarez, and I am with the Alameda County Building and Construction Trade Council. I am also a resident of the 4th District. The building trades represent our 28 affiliated unions and our thousands of construction workers that have happily built this city and the surrounding neighborhoods. First of all, I'd like to thank staff for such a robust report. We understand this was not an easy process, and they have really put the time and dedication into this, and it shows. We ask that you recommend this to City Council to certify the EIR, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. John, please state your full name for the record.
My name is John Ryman. I'm a 50-year resident of the Funktown District of Oakland. I'm a retired recording secretary of Carpenters Local 713, and I'm a candidate for mayor in the city of Oakland. First point I want to make is that this EIR is a fraud. It does not consider the #1 issue that anyone that pretends to speak to the issue of the environment must consider, and that is the issue of global warming. We know that this project, as the concrete cures, will emit massive amounts of carbon dioxide. And this in the area when we face an absolute, in the era when we face an absolute climate emergency. Now, I want to respond to some of the claims made by Fisher mouthpiece Dave Cavell. But before I do so, I want to say that how is it that this can even be considered, this project? The reason that it is that we know that Yuppie Schaff, the mayor, is a creature of the real estate developers, and from what I'm understanding, the same is the case for this commission. I want to, as far as Dave Cavell's claims, he talked about that this is reimagining the Oakland waterfront and a new neighborhood. What that really amounts to is destroying blue collar jobs and destroying the working class base and further yuppifying Oakland. He talked about the tens of thousands of new jobs. Every single impartial academic study that's ever been made of these sorts of projects has shown that that kind of claim is an absolute lie, and that the number of new jobs that are created are minimal at best.
John, you have 15 seconds to make your final
So
comment.
I urge Local 10 to mobilize a movement in the streets, and myself and my campaign, I would be happy to participate in that. We need to put a stop to the real estate developers controlling Oakland.
Thank you for your comment. Shanna, go ahead and unmute yourself and to make your comment.
Good afternoon. My name is Shauna Lazaro. I am the legal director at Communities for a Better Environment. CBE is a member organization of Oakland United, and we're also an environmental justice organization that has spent a lot of quality time with CEQA. And so I'd like to take a little issue with the characterization that CEQA has been given today. CEQA is not complicated. It's actually really carefully designed so that the public can know what a project is, what its impacts are going to be, and what is going to be done to stop those impacts from harming our communities and our environment. As CBE, we submitted extensive comments with our allies on this E.I.R. We spent a lot of time on those comments, and then we waited for many, many months for the city to respond clearly with responses to comments to change this E.I.R. because this is an enormous project that is going to affect not just the West Oakland community, but all of Oakland. For years going forward, we need to really see mitigation. We need to see an accurate project description. We need to see accurate assessments of the environmental impact, and then we need to know how those impacts are going to be mitigated. So instead of getting quality time with the response to comments, during the break, community members and I were looking over this enormous document and then have been further working on it through the current COVID surge. And I have to say,
you have 15 seconds to wrap up your comment.
Your questions are right on. What does this project include? What's it going to look like when it actually comes back to you? This document doesn't tell you that, and CEQA requires that you be told, and more importantly, frankly, that the public be told. And so this document, I have litigated a lot of CEQA cases, and it's not going to survive, and I urge you not to recommend the council approve it. There's no rush right
Thank you
now.
for your comment. Next, I have Lindsay. Please go ahead and state your full name for the record.
Yes, good evening, Jason Lindsay. I'm the president, business agent of Ironworkers Local 378, representing the interests of 2,500 ironworkers, the majority of which live in and around Oakland and Alameda County. This is a responsible E.I.R. Please recommend to the city council to certify this E.I.R. Let's move forward with this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, I'll call our next 5 speakers. Larry Heath, Eunice Kwan, Ty Hudson, and I have a Jani and Francisco. Larry, go ahead and unmute yourself to make your comment. Larry, I'm showing that you are still muted.
Hi, I'm Larry Heath.
Yes.
I've owned a home in Oakland for 40 years. Quite frankly, I consider this one of the most remarkable overtures from a professional sports organization I've ever seen. The Raiders did a job on Oakland twice. Even the Warriors, who had a rabid fan base, just left and even tried to stick us with the last couple of years' rent. Professional sports organizations are rarely as open and as complete and as helpful as the Oakland A's have treated Oakland. Even when Mount Davis was being built, they moved to Vegas for about 2 months of a season, walking away from their own ticket sales. They've been trying to do for Oakland for a long, long time. This offer, I saw it, and my wife helped interpret your report. She is the just freshly retired EPA scientist for California, epidemiologist in air quality. She's cheered openly when she saw what was going to happen. Schnitzer Steel has been a terrible neighbor down there. West Oakland is being poisoned for the last several decades. They have 4 other dumps. Let them move to the other one. The A's are trying to give Oakland something that nobody is giving them. They're trying to take care of a neighborhood that is about half blighted. I have customers down there, Amtrak. I've done business with Matson. The port is not going to be harmed by the A's being down there. There's been a lot of misinformation spread by a lot of people
Sir,
who
you
are
have
telling us
15
things that are
seconds
just
to
not
wrap
true.
up your comment.
Your report was solid. Please pass it.
Thank you. Eunice, go ahead and state your full name for the record.
Hello, my name is Eunice Kwan. I'm a District 1 resident and a part of the Oakland Chinatown Coalition. I also served on the Planning Commission for the Community Benefits Agreement process, so I've been engaged with this project over the last couple of years now. Commissioners, our Chinatown Working Group, which includes both the Coalition and the Chinatown Chamber of Commerce, have legitimate concerns about the impact of this development on Chinatown. And we've been working hard to work through these issues with the city and the A's. A month ago, the city agreed to do additional analysis on the ballpark's impact on Chinatown because the E.I.R doesn't sufficiently address what's happening in Chinatown with this project. The city consultant is not going to be done with this analysis until April. The Planning Commission should not recommend the certification of the final E.I.R at this time, and not until these issues, as well as other serious environmental concerns in West Oakland and Chinatown, are addressed. Please don't recommend approval of an E.I.R that leaves our communities vulnerable to a raw development deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Ty. Please go ahead and state your comment.
Good afternoon, members of the Planning Commission, and my name is Ty Hudson. I am representing Unite Here, Local 2850, the East Bay Hotel and Food Service Workers Union. Hundreds of members of my union work at the Oakland Coliseum. Many have worked A's games and other sporting events for decades, and this project is their best chance to keep those good union jobs here in Oakland. So I am calling to urge you to forward a recommendation to the City Council to certify the E.I.R. 2 long years and a lot of work have gone into this project. The E.I.R has gone through the draft E.I.R and the public comment and now the final E.I.R stages. This is one portion of all the approvals. Subsequent to this, there will be further work on the community benefits, on the Seaport Compatibility Plan, and other aspects of the approvals. And a lot of those issues will be discussed in the future, and we're confident that this project is going to end up providing strong community benefits in a responsible way to the city. It's also going to save hundreds or thousands of union jobs and create a lot of good new jobs. So please forward the recommendation to certify the E.I.R to the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Janani, please state your full name for the record.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Janani Ramachandran. I'm a staff attorney at Centro Legal de la Raza's Workers' Rights Team. And today I am calling on behalf of Centro Legal de la Raza to support Oakland United's position to not recommend certification of the Howard Terminal final E.I.R unless and until there's a clear plan to protect the health and safety of residents and workers in the surrounding areas. Centro Legal is a legal services agency, and many of the populations that our organization serves includes low-income, immigrant, and other communities of color that will undoubtedly be impacted by this project. As other speakers have stated before, there are urgent and significant issues that the E.I.R does not adequately address, including potential exposure of communities in and around the Howard Terminal site to dangerous toxic substances. The E.I.R does not detail a concrete plan to make the site safe, and a lack of concrete promises has led to environmental disasters in similarly positioned low-income communities of color across the Bay Area and across the state. Other unresolved issues that we at Centro are concerned about in the draft E.I.R include extremely inadequate air quality mitigations. The E.I.R states that air quality impacts will be significant and unavoidable, yet does not demarcate steps that will actually be required by the individual parties. A lot of the significant language around air quality is simply optional. We believe that issues including toxic exposure and poor air quality are a part and parcel of environmental justice more holistically for our communities. This includes maternal health and life expectancy, workers' rights and quality of life, tenants' rights and displacement, and many other intersectional issues. Therefore, we stand in solidarity with community-based nonprofits across Oakland in asking you to not recommend certification of this E.I.R unless and until we can see a concrete plan that will protect the best interests of health and safety of all Oaklanders. Thank you.
Thank you. Francisco, please state your full name for the record.
Hi, this is Francisco Castillo, Senior Director of Public Affairs for Union Pacific Railroad. UP believes that the Howard Terminal final E.I.R is woefully incomplete. It's concerning that the Oakland A's have disregarded or glossed over the more than 400 comments which detailed the draft E.I.R's inadequacies regarding rail safety, transportation impacts, and many more. UP has 2 critical supply chain facilities in the area that are directly adjacent to Howard Terminal. It's a busy corridor that serves the Port of Oakland and regional freight network. In addition, there's Amtrak, Altamont Corridor Express, and Capital Corridor passenger trains that operate on these same UP tracks. We have dozens of trains per day that come in and out of our facilities. It's important to note that the trains operations are not static and predictable. Several of those trains are switched and operated for local service. And when those trains are switching directly in front of Howard Terminal, they occupy both MLK Junior Way and Market Street crossings. Occupying those crossings may range anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes, depending on whether or not we have a mechanical issue, even longer if that's the case. We strongly believe that the E.I.R presents insufficient analysis regarding the impacts of train blockages on project access. There's little analysis or discussion on what happens with access to the project if a train occupies the rail crossings. The FEIR also fails to analyze a scenario where the project has fully grade separated rail crossing access points to accommodate all cars, pedestrians, and bicyclists in spite of requests from all the rail agencies to do so. So therefore, UP respectfully requests that the commission not recommend their certification of the E.I.R based on these significant inadequacies. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to call our next 5 speakers: Sabir, Jim, Scott, Millie, and Jean. Sabir, go ahead and unmute yourself to make your comment.
And just hang on, would you just announce the number of attendees and the number of speakers that are in the queue?
We currently have a total of 219 attendees. There are 35 speakers with their hands raised at this time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
Sabir, go
Sabir.
ahead. Mhm.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Sabir Lockett. I'm director of the Faith Alliance for a More Economy, an initiative of the East Bay Alliance for a Sustainable Economy. I'm a commissioner of the City of Oakland on the Army-based Community Jobs Oversight Commission. I was a steering committee member of the City CBA process for economic development and employment, and I'm also a member of the Oakland United Coalition. The City of Oakland developers have failed to adequately inform the public about environmental impacts of the proposed Howard Terminal Ballpark. By releasing the 3,500-page final environmental impact report just days before the holidays, the community has been denied the opportunity to fully review and understand the potential impacts of this project. What is most alarming is that the E.I.R shows a failure to truly commit to addressing and undoing the impacts of environmental racism against Oakland communities. For example, the E.I.R doesn't include critical details regarding how the Fisher family plans on cleaning toxic waste from the site in order to allow for safe construction of expected 3,000 units of housing. Without a clear plan, Oakland families cannot trust that they will be able to safely live near or on the site. Additionally, the high rates of air pollution already present near Howard's Terminal demand a more aggressive response by the Fisher family than is outlined in the E.I.R. It is clear that this final E.I.R. does not adequately address the impacts this project will have on West Oakland, Chinatown, and future residents of Howard's Terminal. So we stand with these impacted communities and demand that the Planning Commission does not certify the E.I.R. until the public can see a clear plan to clean up this toxic site and to reduce the pollution in the surrounding areas. If wealthy developers like the Fisher family wants to build in our town, they need to meet the standards to keep up our community safety and proactively reverse years of environmental racism. Thank you.
Thank you. And Chair, I also would like to note we did have some more hands raised. Our final speaker, Ravi Sharma, is our final speaker at this time. Next, Jim, please state your full name for the record.
Hello, my name is Jim Allison. Hello, Oakland Planning Commissioners. I'm the manager of planning for the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority. The present design is analyzed in both the draft E.I.R. and final E.I.R. shows significant and unavoidable impacts for traffic safety, which indicates that a finding of overriding consideration will be requested of the Oakland City Council. Conceptually, an alternative design shifting the front door of the A's Stadium a block away would intercept patrons from BART and other modes of transportation and elevate them onto a pathway up and over mainline tracks. That could be possible. This is an alternative where findings of overriding consideration for significant impacts likely do not need to be made. CCJPA does not philosophically oppose the A's Stadium in this extraordinary location, so we looked around at other Major League Baseball stadiums to see if crossing mainline tracks is the norm anywhere. It is not. All stadiums near mainline heavy rail tracks include grade separation by design. The California Public Utilities Commission is required to regulate safety, and with Union Pacific, we are confident that their staff will not support the present at-grade mitigations found in the FEIR because they're facially insufficient by the FEIR's own disclosure. Why wasn't a design alternative pursued that would address the primary concerns of the CPUC as a regulatory body? This does not comport with CEQA case law or with being prepared to analyze an E.I.R. process when you have a regulatory body, the CPUC, that you know will be promulgating grade separations for this extraordinary situation. Due to these unfortunate circumstances, we strongly encourage the Oakland Planning Commission to recommend to the Oakland City Council that the FEIR is inadequate in these regards and must analyze an effective grade separation design which goes beyond the self-imposed limits imposed in the EIR. As we have stated from the start, we remain faithful A's transportation partners. We want to work with the A's and the city on a safe design, have said so in writing from the start. We remain poised to assist. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott, go ahead and make your comment.
Yes, thank you very much, Commissioners. My name is Scott Taylor. I'm the CEO and Chairman of the Board of GSC Logistics. GSC handles over 16% of all the import merchandise at the Port of Oakland. We employ 400 people in our warehouse and work with over 200 drivers servicing the port. Howard Terminal is absolutely imperative to the success of the Port of Oakland and the trucking community. Waterfront property should be used for maritime purposes only. Once the property is gone, it's gone forever. There are over 300,000 truck moves at Howard Terminal, 1,200 a day. 10 years ago, residents complained about trucks on city streets. Howard Terminal was a perfect solution for this, and the City Council has not received one complaint in the last 10 years about trucks on city streets. The FEIR is deficient since the A's refuse to address where the trucks will go if Howard Terminal becomes a ballpark, condominiums, and commercial development. The roundhouse is already full, so that's no alternative. The port operates 24 hours a day and is a noisy, heavy industrial work area where residential, commercial, and amusement goers are not compatible. The port is already a busy workplace. If 10,000 cars descend on the port on game days, the port will come to gridlock. customers have already been questioning why the port commissioners would support an amusement park in the middle of an industrial center. If a ballpark and residential development is allowed to be built on port property, it will be followed by lawsuits, and it will be the beginning of the end for the Port of Oakland. GSC has already started making plans about a possible relocation of our operation and taking our 400 jobs somewhere else, because it will not be compatible with an amusement park that's built in the middle of an industrial complex. I respectfully ask that the commission not recommend this flawed document. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Go ahead. We can go
And
ahead.
Chair Manis, this is Secretary Payne. We would like to request a 5-minute recess.
We will recess for 5 minutes, and it is 4:43. We will return at 4:48. Next speaker on this item will be Millie Cleveland, I believe, Desmona.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so 5-minute recess, everyone. I just want to let everybody know that will be a couple more minutes. We're waiting for staff to work out some specific details that they need to deal with before we proceed. So hang on, folks. We'll probably be a couple more minutes.
And Chair Manis, this is the secretary. If you would like to start the meeting again, and I have a few words to say.
I do, and let us give everybody a couple of seconds here to rejoin. And I apologize to everybody. Secretary Payne will provide a little insight on our path forward, which I think is fine. So everybody back on? Okay, terrific, wonderful. And thank you to the public as well. So Secretary Payne, all yours.
Thank you for your patience. This recess was because we became aware that there is another city meeting happening on a Zoom webinar at the same time as this meeting. And some interested parties may have gone to a redistricting meeting instead of coming to this Howard Terminal meeting. And so we have asked the secretary at the redistricting meeting to let people know who might have accidentally gone to that meeting, who intend to speak for Howard Terminal or listen to this Howard Terminal item, to come over to this meeting. And we were giving a bit of time for the secretary to be able to convey that message and alert people to the link to this meeting from the Planning Commission agenda and give people time to come over here. And with that, we have also advised the we've advised the chair that since we had these two meetings at the same time and some people accidentally went to the wrong meeting, to actually allow more people to speak. So not that anyone can speak again, but where we previously had a cutoff, Kenton Rockets Block team Zoom handle was supposed to be the last speaker. We have about an additional 10 speakers, and we will allow speakers. And from this point forward, if Chair, you'd like to set some other rule regarding a cutoff for speakers, that would be fine, because I think we've given people from that other redistricting meeting a time to get over to this meeting.
Okay, wonderful.
And thank you for your patience.
And thank you for trying to resolve the issue. So welcome those who have just joined us. I know we've added some more speakers. So we will reopen the queue and close it. It is 5:05 now. We will close that queue at 5:15 if you do not have your hand raised. So this is an opportunity for those of you who feel like you missed the window or are joining us from another hearing. It is 5:05 and we will keep it open till 5:15. And Ms. Armstrong, you'll give people the sort of 1 minute. So with that, Ms. Armstrong, I think we can proceed. Secretary Payne, right? We are good to go with Millie Cleveland.
Yes, thank you.
And just for clarification, Chair, we are still giving 2 minutes for comments, correct?
Still 2 minutes. And again, if on the start here, give people a sense of the attendees and then the hands raised and then the first 5 speakers, if you would.
Perfect. Okay, so next we will start with Millie. However, let me just, since we've been gone for a while, I will go ahead and call 5 more names. I have Millie, Jean Quan, Alan Payton, Tom Willing, and Melody Davis. Okay, and that will be our next 5 that we're gonna call. Millie, go ahead and you can unmute yourself to make your 2-minute comment.
Yes, my name is Millie Cleveland. I've been a longtime resident of Oakland for over 50 years. I'm asking you to vote no on certifying the final environmental impact report. I think the document is inadequate and it doesn't really respond to the public's concerns, particularly around toxic remediation. The final environmental impact report provides very few details on the A's plan to remediate toxic pollution, which leads me to believe they really don't have a plan. I think it puts you in a situation where you're actually recommending approval of a report before you even know the actual level of toxic remediation or the remaining toxic hazards. I think that as a planning commission, it's your responsibility to ensure that the development works for and benefits all the communities, particularly the existing communities. And so I think the inadequacy of the final environmental impact report is putting our community's health and safety at risk. And that's not acceptable. You have an obligation to make sure that our community is safe. And if the report is not adequately addressing these safety issues, it would be very bad for you to move forward. So I urge you not to move forward on this report and not to support it.
Thank you for your comment. Jean, you can go ahead and make your comment and state your full name for the record.
Hello. I know this has been a long process for you. It started for me when I was mayor. And we knew at the time that this site was particularly complex. It would have to go for a lot of agencies. I just want to address the comments that were made today and ask you to go ahead and forward this to the city council. The city council will clearly have to negotiate both which the final mitigations will be before they approve the E.I.R. and before they approve the project. But it will allow them to go ahead and move ahead, I think, and start those discussions. It is clear that this site in the long term will have more transportation options with 3 BART stations, with the ferry right literally next door, and a population right next door that can walk to the stadium. And so a lot of those issues will be resolved in the actual negotiations, the affordable housing, et cetera. Those are things that only the city council can resolve in its final negotiations. So holding this up at this stage and not letting the city council start looking at the E.I.R. is not helpful. I hope that the community will look at putting the pressure now on the city council. I haven't had a chance to read the whole E.I.R, but it's pretty heavy and I had started, but clearly some of the issues can only be resolved by negotiations of the city council, and you will have a chance to weigh in again on the final project. So I urge you to go ahead. It's a huge project. It will mean a huge difference for Jack London, for Chinatown, for downtown in terms of the synergy between more affordable housing and more transportation and just more people downtown. Now with the pandemic, you can really feel the emptiness of some parts of downtown, which we'd started to build up, and the long-term future is there. East Oakland.
Your 2-minute comment period. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Alan, go ahead and unmute yourself to make your comment.
Commission, hi, this is Alan Payton. I'm actually a resident of Antioch, but I've been a fan of the A's for 50 years as of this year, I just realized today. And I'm speaking in support of moving forward with the E.I.R and moving forward with this project, keeping the Oakland A's in Oakland, unlike the other 2 teams that have left, and which has been unfortunate, but we want to keep them because what's going to happen here is not just going to benefit Oakland, but of all of the East Bay. And to be able to provide a stadium, job creation, all kinds. But I do encourage you to ensure that the mitigations to the impacts to the nearby communities are addressed. So thank you for your time. I'll keep it short since I'm not an Oakland resident.
Thank you. Tom, go ahead and unmute yourself to make your comment.
Hello, my name is Tom Wilging. I live in downtown Oakland near Lake Merritt. I'm a lifelong baseball fan, and for the past 8 or 10 years, I've purchased a season package for the Athletics midweek day games. If the Howard Terminal Stadium is built, I would be privileged to be able to ride my bicycle from home to the ballpark. But I will not support the new ballpark unless a new and fair way can be found to pay for the transportation infrastructure required to move people to the park. Without a firm agreement or funding source for this vital infrastructure, the proposed EIR is a phantom document, a listing of promises likely to be broken. Most importantly, this lack of funding will trigger competition for scarce transportation funding in Oakland. The likely losers of such a competition are Oakland's neighborhoods that already suffer from a lack of transportation resources resulting from previous disinvestment. My proposed solution to this dilemma is for the city to insist that dedicated funding for this necessary infrastructure be incorporated into the project as an integral, inseparable component. Without such a financing mechanism, Oakland could be obligating itself to another version of Mount Davis, whose empty seats in the Coliseum serve primarily to block fans' view of the Oakland Hills. Because Oakland did not demand that the Raiders pay for those unsold seats, we taxpayers continue to pay millions of dollars each year to maintain the city's credit rating.
You have 15 seconds.
In closing, I urge the Planning Commission and the City Council to support the proposal to build a stadium at Howard Terminal only if the final plans include a mechanism for funding transportation infrastructure. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Melody, you may go ahead and unmute yourself to make your comment.
Hello, my name is Melody Davis. I'm a resident of West Oakland. I am very concerned about the impact of the purpose for the proposed development at Howard Terminal. It's not complete. There's no reason to certify this E.I.R. now when the development agreement has not been finalized and there's still changes going on. Like they said about the gondola, they wrote it in, but they didn't put no money to the side. So where's that money gonna come in from? There's not, the dots are not being dotted. There's a lot of dashes, but no periods. My thing that I love the A's. I buried my grandfather in the A's outfit. It's the location. We as taxpayers of Oakland, California is gonna have to pay for it. And that man who just got off the phone saying he lives by the lake, that he know that from Lake Merritt to Mandela Avenue Street in West Oakland, you're gonna have to pay 2 taxes? People in East Oakland have to pay 1, but people from Lake Merritt, why is that? Why that area only? Ironically, you built it in Jacqueline Square. Are you punishing us? I don't understand this at all. I don't understand that. Someone need to bring that to everybody's attention. Why is it 2 taxes just from Lake Merritt side all the way to Mandela? And you built it in there. Does that make any sense? There's too many dashes and not enough periods. And also, if the taxes and everything, where a lot of people in West Oakland have to be relocated, they're not getting paid to be relocated. But the people in Chinatown is. Can somebody answer that? You guys need to look over that report again. Gene Kwan, if you want them to fast track it, then okay, fast track it. But then the city council got to look at it. And they don't have
15 seconds to wrap up your comment. You have a final comment?
So look at me on Channel 7 tonight and Channel 2. What I did today. Thank you.
Okay, with that, Chair, would you like me to note the last speaker?
I would, Ms. Armstrong, and then 5 more speakers' names as well. Thank you.
Okay, so our last speaker, currently, I should say, we do have 201 attendees. We do have 28 hands that are raised right now. Our final speaker will be Richard Hayak. That is the last hand that's called on the list. All right, so our next 5 speakers is Matt Sharp, EBHO, Robin Walker, Naomi Schiff, and Cindy Johnson. Matt, if you could go ahead and unmute yourself to make your comment.
Thank you, Chair Manis and Commissioners. My name is Matt Schrapp. I am the CEO of the Harbor Trucking Association. We're a nonprofit coalition of trucking companies who serve West Coast ports and move close to 2/3 of all maritime cargo into and out of these facilities. Our organization represents trucking companies of all shapes and sizes, from some of the largest companies doing business in North America down to the one truck motor carrier. On behalf of our membership, we truly appreciate the opportunity to comment on this historic item before you today. Since time is limited, I will keep my comments brief and endeavor not to repeat what has already been covered. Today, you are being asked to consider providing a recommendation to the City Council regarding certification of the E.I.R. for the Oakland Waterfront Ballpark District project. While HTA and our fellow stakeholders have been deeply engaged in discussions surrounding the project, especially on needed seaport compatibility measures to maintain acceptable levels of activity and growth for the third largest port in the fifth largest economy in the world, the E.I.R. before you today is regretfully inadequate and fails to address several major issues that we and our stakeholder partners have repeatedly expressed concern over, which the city has completely sidestepped. For trucking, this E.I.R. fails to adequately address truck displacement and relocation, giving zero consideration to the increases in truck VMT that will result from the closing of a 50-acre facility that supports truck parking operations and, as of late, additional container storage. And despite the claim by Dave Cavall, there is nothing in this E.I.R. that results in better air quality. One obvious and glaring omission is the resulting increase in VMT and subsequent emissions from this described truck displacement. It is obvious that there will undoubtedly be emissions increases due to this displacement. However, the E.I.R. ignores it under the guise of these estimates being too speculative.
And you have
Displacement of
15
trucks
seconds
and
to wrap
cargo
up your comment.
and in fact is a definitive and intentional outcome of the Howard Terminal project. We implore you to not recommend approval of this E.I.R. and hope that it is time to go back to the drawing board to address the dozens of issues brought up today by commenters and take a real hard look at how a multi-use stadium and residential developments will truly impact the surrounding community, its residents,
That is your
and the
2-minute
economic
comment
agenda of
period.
Oakland.
Thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for your comment. Okay, EBHO, you could please state your full name for your comment.
Hello, my name is Damian Scott, and I live in East Oakland in District 7. I'm here because I'm concerned about the impact of the proposed development at Howard's Terminal. I think the E.I.R. says that air quality will be impacted significantly and is unavoidable, yet it doesn't require the ACE to take all the steps clearly identified by the community and the West Oakland Community Action Plan to reduce air quality, or rather to reduce air pollution in the area. The ACE should do everything in their power to reduce air quality impacts on this project. I actually live near the Coliseum in the shadow of the AB&I foundry. So I know firsthand what it's like to live near a stadium with poor air quality. This final E.I.R. does not adequately address the impacts this project will have in West Oakland, Chinatown, and future residents of Howard's Terminal. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin, if you could please state your full name for the record.
Good afternoon. My name is Robin Walker, and I am a member of Faith Alliance for the Moral Equality, which is an initiative of East Bay Alliance for a Sustainable Economy. I am recommending that there be some transparency from the Environmental Service Associates, the people who drafted up the final E.I.R, because I've observed that this family or this employee-owned business does not reflect the diversity of the city of Oakland. In the E.I.R, the language is too loose. The statistics are lacking parity, and the numbers are outdated and misleading. And when I say the language is, I have issues around is a lot of maze, a lot of unplanned, and a lot of language saying it's not compulsory. For example, when in the final 20 40 report on housing. It's a final regional housing report. They used the housing patterns from 2015. Language around affordable housing excluded very low income residents, and the table on table 4.12.5, which is on page 4.12.8, only addresses 50, 60, 80, and 100% AMIs. This does not show the levels of affordability, and it doesn't show where they can build on offsite or even do with their impact fees. I suggest that that this is not the vision of Oakland, California, and that you take time to look over this particular document because it does not reflect the professionalism attributed to Oakland. Thank you.
Thank you. Naomi, go ahead and you can unmute yourself to make your comment.
This is Naomi Schiff representing Oakland Heritage Alliance. We urge that this incomplete FEIR not be certified until it is fixed. Not enough time has been allotted for discussion and review. We support the Chinatown Working Group position. As to the two variants that would have significant and unavoidable impacts on historic resources, the FEIR recognizes that a gondola variant would have significant and unavoidable adverse impacts on Old Oakland. The treatment of impacts is deficient. The discussion is unduly restricted by narrow focus on limited partial impacts. A proposed convention center station effects on the Washington Hotel and Swans Market, shadowing and obstruction of views. There's nothing on how a system over Old Oakland will affect it. The FEIR must be revised to support an informed decision. Second, that the E.I.R. proposes no mitigations except for the design of a convention center station. Nothing is proposed for the overall system's design and route. There's just a vague commitment to minimize the horizontal and vertical extent of a station. It assumes without analysis that the gondola line must be brought down Washington and might take up parts of public streets. The E.I.R. contains nothing on the need for these decisions. The mitigation is vague and standardless and defers mitigation to a later phase after the E.I.R. In our letter, we suggested alternative language for the badly written CUL 7, and we urge you to recommend it. We got a staff memo stating that the FEIR would not be submitted to the Landmarks Preservation Advisory Board, even though the variants would have these big impacts on cultural and historic resources. To present the variants only after the FEIR has been certified is like giving a pre-approval to an optional part of the project.
15 seconds to make your final comment.
Which the FEIR admits would be highly destructive. We therefore request that you recommend the variants be removed or postpone certification of the FEIR until after a hearing at the Landmarks Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy, please state your full name for the record.
Hi, my name is Cindy Johnson, and I'm reaching out on behalf of Bike Walk Alameda. Thank you for taking my call. We wanted to thank staff for responding to our letter and the letters of many members of the public who expressed a desire to advance the estuary bike and pedestrian bridge connecting West Alameda and Oakland as the Ballpark project is considered. While it's true that the bridge has not been part of this project, we hope that your recommendation, should it be to go forward, will take a broader view, recognize the overlap and the urgency to, at a minimum, preserve landing easements for the bridge, options for which are extremely limited. The bridge could help mitigate some of the project's significant impacts. More broadly, it's also projected to reduce vehicle trips across the estuary by 40,000 trips a week. Shifting trips away from cars means reduced emissions, less noise, and safer streets. It means affordable, healthy access to goods and services that are now inaccessible, and a big boost for local businesses. The bridge is now in many key planning documents and is in the PID phase, which will go deep on engineering design and identify state and federal funding sources. We urge you, if this project goes forward, to at least recommend the bridge landing easements be identified and preserved as part of this process, as they've been in Alameda, to ensure that this transformational bridge has a future and can help make our communities and region more vibrant and more resilient in the future. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to call the next 5 names. I have Alvina, Priscilla, Jackson, Nathan, and Peter. Alvina, please go ahead and state your full name for the record.
Good evening, planning commissioners. My name is Alvina Wong. I am a CBA steering committee member for the Howard Terminal project. I was the co-lead of the environmental topic cohort, actually. I'm also a steering committee member of the Oakland Chinatown Coalition and have been working with other members of the Chinatown Chamber on this Chinatown Community Working Group on the Howard Terminal project to really ensure that our communities and our neighborhood is regarded in this project. Also, as a staff of the Asian Pacific Environmental Network, representing Chinatown families and monolingual low-income Chinese immigrant workers and tenants, our members will be directly impacted by this project, as well as have shown deep concern about the lack of overview on the Chinatown community. We appreciate the council's direction of the staff last July to continue working with us and start resolving these issues. And like my colleague said, we've been making really good progress. And so really want to appreciate the time and effort that the city staff have put in, but truly need more time to resolve these issues. It was recently confirmed that the E.I.R does not actually address the major impacts of Chinatown traffic, congestion, and other environmental concerns that we've been asking for. And in fact, that additional analysis will be necessary to inform an adequate mitigation plan. And as stated by my colleague, all of this additional study will not be ready for review until April. And so we truly believe that a final E.I.R cannot move forward with approval until this additional study is complete with community review and input, as well as a solid mitigation plan. Like I said, a study will inevitably show that undeniable major impacts on Chinatown, as well as the rest of the neighborhoods, and the other unavoidable impacts to air quality, hazard materials, toxic waste, et cetera, that other folks have commented on in Chinatown, West Oakland, and other neighborhoods.
15 seconds to make your final comment, Alvina.
Okay. So we know that they need to have mitigation plans as a part of the final E.I.R. We know you're not the final decision makers on this process, but your recommendation carries a lot of weight. And so we must ensure that there's no recommendation to the city council unless and until the Chinatown traffic study and mitigation plan are completed. So please do not take action tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Priscilla, please state your full name for the record.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Priscilla Hong. I was born and raised in Oakland and love my city. Thank you so much for all your hard work in creating a better city. I'm asking you tonight not to recommend the certification of this E.I.R. Like many others, I'm extremely concerned about the significant and unavoidable impacts, which include air emissions, traffic impacts, inadequate truck parking serving the port, and increased noise pollution. The proposed project spans from Clay Street and crosses many other major streets such as Jefferson, MLK, Castro, Brush, Market, Myrtle, and Filbert. Additionally, it runs right along the tracks, the railroad tracks, and is adjacent to the port, which supports our state as the world's 5th largest economy. These significant and unavoidable impacts would very negatively affect all of these neighborhoods and beyond. And to have any project potentially disrupt these operations is inadequate. The least environmentally impactful thing this project can do would be to remain at the site in which it already sits. I would encourage the A's to pursue that option and again, urge you all not to recommend certification for this E.I.R. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackson? I'm sorry, just one. Jackson, you can go ahead and unmute yourself to make your comment.
Thank you. Jackson Moore, property owner in Jack London District and member of the Jack London Rail Safety Working Group. I note and appreciate the updated mitigation measures, specifically those in Trans 3 that will provide improvements to the rail safety crossings beyond that which were originally proposed by the sponsor. I believe that the Howard Terminal location is the right location for the A's ballpark, and I encourage the commission to accept and recommend certification of the final E.I.R. Thank you.
Thank you. And Nathan, please state your full name for the record.
I'm Nathan Landau. I'm a planner for transportation and land use planner for AC Transit. AC Transit recognizes the value of a central location like this, but unfortunately, there are still very serious unanswered questions about how this project will affect the AC Transit system. AC Transit is going to be a major carrier if this project is built, even if the gondola is built, given its limited capacity. It's also, this site is generally near 3 BART stations, but they're all a mile or more away. But we've raised a number of issues about how transportation services would be paid, about what kind of facilities would be, physical facilities would be provided on Broadway, which is the transit spine for Oakland and even beyond, and other streets. Unfortunately, to date, we haven't really gotten adequate answers. We understand that the A's are going to be sending us a letter, maybe giving more substantive answers to this, but right now, we don't see a document that really addresses these things. And we'd also note that with transit, first of all, time is money. Time is literally money, and delays are costs to AC Transit that have to be absorbed. And the delays can ripple through the system as buses get stuck in congestion or slow traffic. So we really urge the commission and recommending to the council to dig deeper and really develop an adequate transportation system for a major facility.
Nathan, you have 15 seconds to wrap up your comment.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Okay, as we come upon, we're still calling speakers. It looks like there are several speakers that have come after our final speaker. And I just, believe our final speaker will be Richard Hayak. So I do have 4 speakers, Ravi, Keith, Hal, and looks like Nathan, you have raised your hand again. You are welcome to submit your comments directly to the commission. Also, please submit your comments. You can also submit your comments to the planner at this time. So Richard Hayak will be our final speaker for the evening on this item. Okay. Next
Ms.
item.
Armstrong.
You're welcome. Currently, we do have 199 attendees and 19 hands raised. Our next 5 speakers will be Peter, Evie, Melvin, Miss Margaret, and Susan. Peter, if you could go ahead and unmute yourself to make your comment.
Good evening. This is Peter Saba. I'm the general counsel for Schnitzer Steel, which for over 50 years has operated a facility providing critical recycling services to the community and family wage career jobs, many of which are union jobs. I want to thank the commission for its thoughtful consideration of the decision before it, and would respectfully suggest that such consideration can only result in one outcome, that the commission recommend against certification of the FEIR by the city council because it is inadequate, is fundamentally flawed, and is not in compliance with CEQA. The commission has heard this afternoon and evening from numerous speakers who have detailed how the E.I.R. has failed to adequately consider the significant adverse impacts of the A's Howard Terminal project in numerous areas: transportation safety, air quality, hazardous material remediation, to name a few. A review of the findings in section 6 of the staff report on which the commission is expected to base its recommendation demonstrate that those findings cannot stand up to close scrutiny. For example, finding 4 states that the E.I.R. provides information to decision makers and the public on the environmental consequences of the proposed project, but by deferring analysis and mitigation in critical areas, as noted by other speakers, government agencies, and many other commentators, The information provided is inadequate. Similarly, finding 5 claims that the EIR adequately discusses the potential adverse environmental effects.
Did you want to make a final comment, Peter? We can, one final comment.
In conclusion, based on the failure of the E.I.R. to comply with CEQA, I urge the commission to carry out its duties and recommend against certification of the FEIR. Thank you.
Thank you. Evie, you may go ahead and unmute yourself to make your comment. Please state your full name.
Hello, my name is Evie Huang. I'm a customs broker and president of the Customs Brokers and Forwarders Association in Northern California. We represent members and business owners who use the services of a regional port. Port of Oakland is import and export services. It is very valued as a gateway to U.S. commerce and for exporting our U.S. goods. Specifically, the Valley requires easy access to the Port of Oakland for their goods going out to market. That I would speak on behalf of Maritime Services at the port is a given. That the City of Oakland should promote the Port of Oakland services should be a given. We often hear of the pros and cons between which union to support. I ask that the city support the good paying blue collar jobs that ILWU provides with port services, and that additionally, the city is responsible for making sure that the Port of Oakland is viable. The second part I wanted to address is that what we are speaking of here, the Oakland A's are proposing development of a stadium and luxury condos that is above the ground, but the City of Oakland is responsible for the ground underneath it. Any toxic waste, the flooding, as well as any air quality issues will be an issue. And I think that the E.I.R. should not be rushed through. It was only sent out on December 17th and should be further studied, and all groups studied it extensively. And my last thing is to provide a cautionary note for City of Oakland, planning for the future for the City of Oakland residents and businesses, that you take a caution to what Santa Clara agreed to when they gave the 49ers their Levi Stadium.
Evie, that is your 2-minute comment period.
Thank you.
Mhm. Melvin, go ahead and unmute yourself to make your comment.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. We have a lot of trust issues with the E.I.R., and we know that not all of us have read it in its completely. Okay, I don't even know if you 6 have read it completely. But the inadequacies of the E.I.R. doesn't mount up to what's been asked. We have problems with the grade separation. That was never mentioned. I'll go back to where we talk about jobs in Oakland. If the Oakland A's were serious about helping the community, as they said they were, they would have started putting people in the Mandela Training Center for the apprenticeship program. If they're going to have 3,000 jobs for people in Oakland, that hasn't happened. The Howard Terminal, as Scott Taylor said, was used to get the trucks off of the streets, to have a place for them to go as a catch and pitch yard, not for condominiums, so that the port could be viable for the city of Oakland, San Leandro, Hayward, Richmond. What will happen if you build condominiums on the port's land? We'll have to have our own goods trucked in from somewhere else. That's not good for none of us. The ILWU has just hired 1,000 people off the street so that they can have a good paying job here in Oakland. We promoted 350 people here in our ranks so they could be insured to keep on working here. If this was ever happened where Howard Terminal was being used as a coliseum, condominiums, a hotel, an amusement park, what will happen in the city of Oakland? The residents will raise hell about the noise we make 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. Nobody wants to be in a noise suppressed area when they get off of work like no one else here. It's a bad idea to even go and approve something that you don't know the gist of. We got to understand the whole E.I.R, the F.E.I.R, and we don't. None of us do.
Alvin, did you have a final comment? That is your 2-minute comment period.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Miss Margaret, please state your full name for the record.
Hi, I'm Miss Margaret Gordon with the West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project. And I would like to say, here we are in 2020, and you mean to tell me that the city had no plan of action to counter the issue of significant and unavoidable mitigations on this project? That don't make any sense based on all the things that we as West Oakland are talking about, electrification, and also what happened to AB 617. The city and the port has signed on to AB 617 as a emission reduction plan for West Oakland. So is the E.I.R just dismissing AB 617? That's what's happening when you say significant unavoidable. Then also simultaneously, we just heard that the port is talking about dredging for the larger ships. Of 19,000 ships could be coming in, 19,000 containers could come in on one ship. So simultaneously, we're gonna have a ballpark being built, a port, a channel being dredged, and all that is adding more impacts to West Oakland. And nobody's still talking about, hey, we've been sitting at the table with you for doing AB6 community action planning. That don't make any sense. You're really not taking in consideration of our health. I don't know nobody in West Oakland could afford a lung transplant. And also, nobody's talked about the fires, the seasonal fires that we have.
Ms. Margaret, you have 15 seconds to wrap up your comment.
Also, sea level rise. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Susan, you may go ahead and make your comment.
Hello, I'm Susan Shaw. This is a development deal to benefit the A's. It's not just a ballpark. They are looking to make lots of money for themselves using the hook of a ballpark. The city of Oakland be damned. I personally would need to get to the ballpark using mass transit. And because I have a disability and can't walk far, this would be very difficult unless they did the gondola, but they'll probably charge an arm and a leg to do that. I think we should just use the Coliseum. The Howard Ballpark has only a capacity of 35,000, and the Coliseum is much larger. The Coliseum has BART. Howard Terminal lacks mass transit, and this could hurt our port. I think that Oakland should save its taxpayer money and just do a major rebuild at the Coliseum site. And I also want to say something about the Santa Clara business. That the 49ers really screwed Santa Clara, to continue what the woman was starting to say. These ball companies will just turn on you. They just are using the city for money. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, I'm sorry. I'm going to call actually the next 5 speakers. Sharon Rose, Tazan, Mike Jacob, Kenton, and Emily Wheeler. Sharon, go ahead and unmute yourself to make your comment.
Thank you. The Howard Terminal F.E.I.R is incomplete. The city has disregarded or glossed over the more than 400 comments which detail the draft E.I.R's many inadequacies. I was one of those who wrote a comment in which I expressed concern about the lack of assessment of the impact of the Howard Terminal Stadium project on future jobs at the Port of Oakland. The FEIR does not adequately assess seaport compatibility measures. As a result, we have no assurance that our port will continue to generate the good union longshore jobs and related jobs in the community that it has generated up to now. Will Oakland continue to be a major US port for the remainder of this century? The FEIR does not answer that question. Do not accept this inadequate report. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Tazon, if you could please state your full name for the record.
Good evening, commissioners. I want to thank you all for your leadership on this important topic. My name is Tasian Kwamaleli. I'm a government and public affairs rep for Schnitzer Steel, which provides critical recycling resources in our community and has offered living wage jobs, many of which are union to Oaklanders for more than 50 years. I'm also a West Oakland native and an East Oakland homeowner. Like many of the callers, I urge you not to recommend certification of the FEIR, as it does not provide answers to many of the issues raised in the 400 plus comments from concerned community leaders. Air quality, truck displacement, toxic remediation, and rail safety are just a few of the issues that have not been adequately addressed. Therefore, these issues will bring critical, significant, and unavoidable impact that will cause further detriment to the West Oakland community. The FEIR should not be certified until a real plan for these issues are in front of you for complete review. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, Mike, if you could please unmute yourself to make your comment.
Hi, good evening, commissioners. Mike Jacob with Pacific Merchant Shipping Association. We represent ocean carriers, marine terminal operators, and tenants at the Port of Oakland. We ask you to not recommend certification on the E.I.R this evening. For an E.I.R to be adequate, it must do more than just acknowledge potential impacts. It really must meaningfully assess impacts for significance. And then for those impacts, propose mitigation measures, and then identify impacts that remain significant after feasible mitigation. The draft E.I.R failed to do that, and its responses to us and others, the final E.I.R fails just the same. This document does not detail or provide a project description of the port's promised seaport compatibility measures, is inadequate in identifying significant impacts to the port and port-related impacts. Note that in the staff report and key issues on seaport compatibility, the key phrase here is that the final seaport compatibility measures may potentially include other measures not related to CEQA impacts. And that's why staff decided not to include them in the E.I.R. It may not include CEQA related impacts, but it may. And those are not considered. That's our primary consideration here. The A's and boosters have been really honest about their intent. It's to create a project that's transformational to the city. But when you look at the E.I.R, it is downplaying the project. It is not intended to be transformational because it doesn't assess transformational impacts and doesn't provide transformational mitigation. This E.I.R is really full of a lack of analysis. It defers mitigation. It defers analysis to future plans and basically says, don't worry, we'll take care of it later. That is inadequate.
Mike, did you have one final comment? That is your 2-minute
Yeah,
comment.
thank you. We would ask you to refrain from certification, ask the E.I.R and other entitlements, including seaport compatibility measures, all be taken up together and not bifurcated. Thank you.
Give me 1 second here. Next, I'm going to call Kenton. If you could unmute yourself to make your comment.
Hi there, my name is Kenton Kavescu. I've been an Oakland resident since 2014, and I'm just calling in to voice my support for the committee recommending the certification of the E.I.R document. I looked through a lot of it, thought it was very thorough, and appreciated the analysis on the quiet zone. and the railway safety improvements as well. So just voicing my support. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call the last speaker and then we'll review the list for our final comment. Next will be Emily Wheeler. Just 1 second here. I'm sorry about that, Emily. You may go ahead and make your comment.
Hi, my name is Emily Wheeler. I lived in Oakland for most of my life, born and raised in the Bay Area, and I am a resident of San Antonio, pretty near the Chinatown area. And I urge you to not certify the draft EIR, or the final EIR, for reasons that many other commenters have already mentioned. I personally oppose this project, but I don't think you have to oppose this project to be opposed to this EIR for reasons that someone 2 speakers ago from the Pacific Merchant Association really highlighted. This EIR hasn't assessed the conditions and just truly isn't complete. And I don't believe that the E.I.R process was really designed for projects of this scale that are so transformational. And this one really does not meet the bar. They're taking this final document, but they're just saying that they want to defer all of these studies and analyses and solutions to down the road. And so they're requiring you to agree to something that you don't even know what it is yet. So for that reason alone, I would urge you not to certify this EIR. Again, I oppose the project, but I think that even someone who supports Howard Terminal could want this EIR to be more complete and some, more concrete before certification. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Susan Ransom, go ahead and unmute yourself to speak.
Hi, Susan Ransom, SFA Terminal. Most of you know me. I've met with you. We operate 290 acres of port property along the estuary, handling 65% of the port goods, and a long-term and respected tenant of the port. We collectively work with the union, truckers, and rail and the port to get these essential goods out where they need to be. We are in close proximity to Howard Terminal, where about 20 gigantic vessels turn at the basin 24/7 in order to berth at Oakland International Container Terminal. It's been disheartening to port tenants that our port commissioners and executive port branch is working to advance a certification on an EIR that is clearly a misrepresentation of facts, concerns, and needed mitigations. Case in point, for months on behalf of SSA and our contracted partners, I've been speaking to the concerns on water safety during games, concerts, including fireworks, as well as the lights and noise generated by the ships with 24/7 terminal operations. Although partially addressed in the EIR, it does not attempt to quantify or analyze the scope and scale of identified risks associated with commercial navigation and marine traffic. There needs to be a clear, specific direction in the EIR on the plan of action to divert tragedy where liability falls if there's a loss of life. The maritime reservation land under the current A's term sheet is for the Turning Basin project and needs to be removed in an amended term sheet, which many parties are actively working on. Ballpark or no ballpark, this is maritime land, needs to stay maritime land until the port offers it back to the A's for rights of first refusal should their project make it that far. I urge you to recommend that the EIR be sent back for additional consideration, that the significant concerns around water safety and maritime impacts be discussed in detail with the Coast Guard, Harbor Safety Committee, and Maritime Operations to create a plan that addresses these concerns prior to any sort of FEIR certification. What is included now is purely speculative and defers to any sort of concrete analysis or mitigations measures to date. Please keep in mind the A's dream of potential revenue stream for the city is over 40 years. Do not make us a check box and work with us collectively. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Chair, did you want to announce speakers, the last final speaker? Or did you want me to?
You're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I just lost my headphone charge. Yes, so I believe we have 8 more speakers. The last is Davey. That will be the end of our speakers. on this item. So with that, Ms. Armstrong, let us proceed with Josh, I believe is the next.
That is correct. Josh, go ahead and unmute yourself to make your comment.
Yes, hi, my name is Dr. Josh Shanoff. I'm a resident of Oakland, grew up in this area. I'm speaking in support of certification of the final E.I.R. Principally, there's an economic value. This is a $12 billion proposed investment in the city of Oakland. It's infrastructure, only a very small fraction of which is a burden on the taxpayers, and which is only a burden in the respect that it's paid for by additional taxes generated from the project itself. Secondarily, the economy and downtown areas in Jack London Square of Oakland desperately need infusion of businesses, visitors, and this is a highly underutilized area of Oakland that's really been a lost opportunity for the city and the entire area for decades. And thirdly, the people, who are in fact mostly speaking in opposition to this on environmental concerns are speaking for the industrial businesses of that area that in fact have been polluting this area of West Oakland and the lower socioeconomic classes that typically live in that area for decades. This is a documented higher death rates, morbidity rates, hospitalization. And in fact, one of the general counsel speaking of Schnitzer Steel in his very meeting literally recently had to pay a multi-million-dollar settlement for non-compliance with pollution in this area. So the idea that somehow the opposition to this project is in line with environmental concerns is laughable, essentially. So, and finally, if this $12 billion investment is turned down on such concerns, it is a generational loss for the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Edith, go ahead and state your full name for the record.
My name is Edith Bertado. I'm a District 3 resident. I'm asking you to make a recommendation to the City Council. Sports is a point of civic pride and unites a city. It makes people feel like they are a part of something bigger than themselves and makes them feel proud of their city. 2020 was a hard year for everybody. Many of us were trying to just hold on mentally and physically. Baseball came as a saving grace for my mind during this horrible time. Personally, the A's comforted me, helped me relax, improved my mood, and helped me connect with friends. Sports gives me something to look forward to in my daily life. I watched every single game and it took my mind away from the hardships myself and the world were facing. Sometimes we need that mental break. Even the strongest among us can't always keep going and going without some sort of moment to where you can check out. The A's are a part of town culture, wearing that Oakland jersey across the country, representing this underdog of a town that lives in the shadow of the shiny, glitzy city of San Francisco matters to us. Fans take incredible pride in the green and gold and the name Oakland and believe and understand that there is a scrappy little group of dudes wearing green and gold who always seem to overachieve while being under-resourced. We love and treasure them because in certain ways they represent and reflect how we see ourselves, a town of overachieving underdogs. There is so much displacement that those who are not from here or just showed up don't have any tie to that and find it difficult for them to understand. Losing this team would devastate me and devastate a community that may never recover. The city will just deteriorate and it will be tough on us fans and the residents of Oakland. I urge you to recommend to City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ravi, if you could please state your full name for the record.
Hi, Ravi Sharma. I'm a resident of the Jack London area.
And thank you to all of the committee for all of your work in assessing and actually holding this forum. I am a father to a 4-year-old little girl. I live here in the Jack London area and have done so for the last 5 years. And I was living in New York City in the borough of Queens, and then briefly in the Bronx as well. And the reason why I mentioned that is I really appreciated all the comments from the various participants that have voiced their opinion and their feedback. I really wanted to express my support for this E.I.R. because no one has a crystal ball, but I have experienced in life similar E.I.Rs that were posted when the Yankee Stadium was being built, and it was a colossal project to say the least. And the same happened when the new Mets Stadium was being built. But what I do know is that fast forward after those projects were completed, a monumental impact to the surrounding community in a positive manner did happen. Were there gaps? Yes. Were there things that needed to be addressed? Yes. But the actual economic stimulus that the projects both provided is what was something that just now is something that the community just really loves and benefits from all of the jobs and all of the resources that created. And oftentimes during that process, I remembered hearing flawed document, inadequate findings. But however, fast forward,
You have
it's a
15
very
seconds
different result. But yeah, just thank you for your time, and just very much in positive favor for the E.I.R. and the Oakland Stadium and Jack London.
Thank you. Okay, so we are down to our final 5 speakers. Hal Gordon, Dolores, Keith, Kirion, and Mayor Davey will be our final commenter. Again, Mayor Davey is our final commenter of the evening. Hal, you may go ahead and unmute yourself to make your comment.
Hi, my name's Hal Gordon. I'm a PhD student at the University of California, Berkeley in environmental economics. I'm also a teamster and a vendor at the Oakland A's Stadium. I want to speak in favor of moving the E.I.R. forward. I wanted to talk, especially talk about the 3,000 housing units that are proposed. Building housing density near public transportation, a mile within BART and right next to the ferry is nearly always good for the environment. The likely impacts will include lower rents across the city, supply of housing as the supply of housing grows, as well as less sprawl throughout the entire region. If the project doesn't go forward and those 3,000 housing units aren't built, those would-be residents will either displace existing Oakland residents by competing with them for existing housing, or will live farther away from jobs and from public transportation, which, in a place out in the suburbs that would require more heating and air conditioning and would end up creating more carbon emissions and more driving as they have to drive to the city center. So, I don't think that part really often gets thought of in these E.I.Rs, but building dense housing, sort of no matter what it is, near public transportation in a place like Oakland that has a really temperate weather is really great for carbon emissions. Would like to think about that more often, I think, when I think of environmental impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Dolores. You can unmute yourself to make your comment.
Hello, my name is Dolores Tejada. I'm with East Bay Housing Organizations and with Oakland United. And I just want to speak to the suggestion by some of the commissioners that some of the attendees don't understand the process or that which I think is a huge mischaracterization of the brilliance and experience of Black and Brown Oaklanders who have lived through generations of environmental injustice, housing displacement, and limited opportunities for economic self-sufficiency. In fact, community organizations and individuals have valuable insight to contribute. However, the limited time frame to examine this document was insufficient, and just our initial review showed the following missing from this document. We submitted a letter during the draft E.I.R process, and the multiple points that we raised in that letter were not addressed, including the fact that affordable housing and displacement have a direct impact on the environment and are not merely social and economic issues, as this document seems to state. The responses to the comments dismiss housing displacement issues as merely social and economic, which ignores the direct environmental impacts related to housing, jobs, and transportation. Adequately studying issues related to housing and affordability and displacement is essential to understand and mitigate environmental impacts on issues such as air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, traffic, and other established environmental issues that CEQA must address. The impacts of this development cannot be properly assessed without specificity of affordability of housing, which this document does not do. Having a clear understanding of what housing will be at the site allows for a better understanding of what impacts the site will have on other parts of the built environment.
Dolores, you have 15 seconds.
Housing is Housing is a major concern of the community, and it has a direct impact on a host of environmental issues. Increasing the availability of affordable to low wage workers on the site and existing low income residents of the community is an important way to reduce air pollution, traffic, greenhouse gas emissions, and other related things. This final E.I.R does not address multiple issues, and we have brilliance in the community that are and very valuable input to contribute, and we look forward to continuing to discuss these issues before you move forward with any certification of this document.
Period. Thank you very much, Dolores. Okay, our final two speakers. Karen, please state your full name for the record.
Thank you. I'm Kieran Slaughter, and I grew up in Berkeley, Oakland. I also worked and lived in West Oakland, and I still have family there. I'm a city planner of 15 years, specializing in transportation and economic development, and I'm in support of this project. And as so many other people said, I mean, as a former college athlete, I understand the impacts of sports in a community, whether it's small or large. As a fan, where else can you gather thousands of strangers from different walks of life and come together for a common cause? I mean, just the idea of high-fiving and hugging a total stranger after a dunk, a touchdown, or a grand slam can't be duplicated in any other environment. And every time I pass by the project site, I literally envision the schematic and the drawings and imagine how this project will look and perform after it's completed. And I'm excited. As a kid, I used to watch the A's play through the fence at the Coliseum, and I want my kids to be able to enjoy the spirit of rooting for a hometown team and attending a hometown team's game. And as a planner, I sympathize with you. I've been in your position numerous times. I've got numerous approved E.I.Rs, MNDs, a BCDC permit, general plan amendment under my belt, and I understand the position that you and staff are in. And you can almost close your eyes and hear the exact same comments in opposition of any other E.I.R that's ever been circulated and reviewed in the public hearing. And so it's just, unfortunate that we hear the same traffic noise. I mean, it's unfortunate. I think the E.I.R is adequate. And this is a once in a lifetime opportunity to create a transformational project that will positively improve the life of Oaklanders as well as the region. And I recommend adoption of the E.I.R. Let's do something that Oakland really deserves. Oakland deserves this.
Thank you for your comment. Our final hand, Mayor Davey, please unmute yourself to make your comment.
Hi, coming to you live from the Whole Foods Market on Harrison's lunchroom. My name is Michael Davey. I'm a lifelong resident in Oakland and an A's fan. We can discuss how great this ballpark could be with impacts to Oakland and everything else, but we're here to discuss the environmental impact report, and I think that we should approve this report or send it to council, because even if you're not a baseball fan, having that opening up Howard Terminal to public access and all the green space is just going to be a huge benefit and boon to Oakland. During the pandemic, the little grassy lawn by the ferry terminal was kind of my social distancing, hang out with my friends. And I just kind of looked at that terminal, how underutilized it was, and just was like imagining how great it could be with just acres of more parkland and public access, even if there wasn't a stadium, or even if there wasn't, even if you're not interested in the baseball aspect of it. So Planning Commission, I suggest you approve this and move forward, and let's go Oakland.
Thank
And
you.
I'm done with my lunch. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, Chair, looks like that was our final speaker of the evening.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Armstrong. And again, thank you all for your testimony, and thank you very much for being responsible on our 2-minute time to enable. I don't even know how many speakers we have, Desmona, but obviously a lot. So let me close the public hearing. Let me bring the item back to the commission for discussion. And let me start by asking my fellow commissioners questions of staff, questions of information that you would like more input on from Pete. So let me know how you'd like to start. No hands up. There we go. Thank you, Commissioner Shirazi.
Just trying not to be the first one up again. I have just a couple questions for staff, I guess, maybe some discussion. There was sort of some themes that came up, both in our comments and our letters, as well as the speakers today. And I was just wondering if we get staff to speak a little bit to them. Specifically, there was a lot of comments about the toxic remediation, rail safety, and air quality not being fleshed out in this plan, as well as the funding mechanism and the financing portion. So I'm wondering if staff could just speak to what that process looks like moving forward.
Yeah, so Pete Bowman, Bureau of Planning staff here. With regard to the hazmat issues, the consolidated response 4.15 in the final E.I.R directly responds to those questions. That was one of the items that we did a consolidated response on. In quick summary, the mitigation that was adopted, and it was identified as less than significant, requires that this go to DTSC for approval. The issue is that the remedial action plan cannot be approved prior to adoption and certification of the E.I.R. So that process has to wait. So it's kind of cart and the horse type issue. However, there has been a human health and ecological risk assessment done that was prepared and approved by DTSC as part of the ongoing process. The studies in the process of the applicant working with DTSC has identified the contamination that's on site that's of concern for human health, and they've also identified necessary levels of cleanup or basically making sure that there's no direct contact to residents that would be living there, so that it meets the residential levels, and all of that is covered within that consolidated response. For air quality issues, this is, a tricky one. Obviously, this is an AB 617 area, and the WOCAP was adopted to address a lot of those issues. One thing as it relates to the CEQA thresholds on this is that two things. One, from a cumulative aspect, when the background levels already exceed the threshold, you're in a situation where you cannot add anything to it. And all project and operations, as long as people are driving cars or building buildings that, with machines that create emissions, there will be emissions. So that's one issue. And mitigations have been identified that, has requirements that all feasible mitigation be included. And that is to target basically getting it below the threshold or as close as possible. The reason it remains significant and avoidable is that it's not known if they can get to that level. Same thing with the project related impacts regarding on the project level with regard to construction and operation. Those emissions, often when you're looking at thresholds, you're looking at a sort of per capita impact. So, there would be like a performance-based metric. However, in this case, it's just a flat rate, like the numbers for the toxic air contaminants. Those are flat numbers. So the bigger the project, the bigger those emissions get. So you don't get to break it out. So if this was broken into a bunch of little project sites, as you'd see around other, parts of, with infill development, they would be coming in less than under the threshold. Given that the sheer size of the project, there are issues with trying to get that below. However, once again, mitigations have been identified, and I can hand it off to Brian Schuster from ESA, who's the air quality expert, that can go further into the additional WOCAP measures that have been identified. However, as I was saying, it still requires all feasible mitigation, and the target being to get it below the threshold. And I'm not sure if there was a third item that was in that.
Yeah, real quick, I will say just DTSC is Department of Toxic Control Services for the state, in case that's new terminology. I find that we often talk in acronyms and initialisms, so I like to define them. And then the third part was just if you could discuss the financing piece as it relates to this document.
Yeah, so the financing piece, that's all going to be tied into, and I'm assuming this is talking about, the ongoing discussions that have been out there with regard to offsite infrastructure financing, creation of an infrastructure financing district. Those are really separate from this E.I.R. The point of the E.I.R. is to identify the impacts of the project, and it's not relative to who's paying for what of the project.
Okay, thank you very much.
So Commissioner Shirazi, that work good? Okay, terrific. Okay, so Commissioner Segru.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chair. Pete, I was hoping you could cover, I know we had heard from a few commenters and we received a few letters around the rail safety issues. And I personally felt like the consolidated response around 4.6 was really sufficient, but I was hoping we could just touch on it now that we have a lot of active participants here in terms of the safety mechanisms that we will put in place around game day and what the E.I.R. identifies in terms of those northmost streets being the most viable in terms of an overcrossing. So thank you.
Yeah, so one issue that was identified is we created a mitigation to address the at-grade rail crossings that requires a grade separation pedestrian bridge that would access the site. So in the event that, trains are blocking, and this would really be looking to run down along to where we're looking at the transportation hub going on 2nd Street. So as people are coming off, it'd be a direct route to go into the site. However, acknowledging that, people are still coming down through, from downtown coming into the site, there's a lot of people that are going to be entering Jack London Square and then pursuing to the ballpark along Water Street. So with that in mind, a full grade separated, entirety of everything is really a feasibility issue with really cutting off Jack London from the rest of the city and creating that sort of walled off approach right there. If you were to grade separate all those crossings, the other issue is that you're going to have a lot of taking issues and condemnation issues with regard to businesses and properties that have access off of those streets now that would no longer have access. So just from that standpoint, that was one issue with grade stepping everything through Jack London Square and down along Embarcadero. The other thing that I had mentioned earlier was the project alternative that does include the grade separation, and it studied both Market and Brush Street approaches into the site. There were difficulties with having all of the new ones grade separation because you end up basically putting an elevated roadway system that goes into the site and really starts to illuminate a lot of the site plan, and then, really kind of, again, walls it off from everything else. And, that is really also a feasibility issue. And, getting back to what is proposed also with the mitigations for the at-grade rail crossings, basically what's proposed as part of that mitigation is a plan that would put in fencing down along Embarcadero so that people can no longer cut through the block. Right now, you'll have trains stopped, and I've seen it myself, and people walk out and just jump the train. That will now be fenced off. At the intersections, they will have what's called quad gates, that basically block vehicles from going in any direction, so that it really does limit that. Further, the transportation management plan, which is one of the mitigations that's included in the document to really address VMT and trip reduction measures, also includes a lot of measures for just overall traffic management on game days. One of the things that's also identified for game days is to have traffic control officers at those intersections, so that in addition to the measures that's in place, because people could potentially go around the gates or jump, there will be traffic control officers there to stop and prevent that from happening as well. I hope that answers the question. If there's any other questions, I also have Rob Reese from Fair to dig deeper into the technical aspects.
No, thank you.
Fern, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Yeah, question around the rail safety. So could you, Pete?
The issue is that you have all these great separated crossings, and the measures
why even the proposed mitigation are
those are basically to a different agencies of this commission. So because of that required approval, we can't definitively say that all of these measures will go in place and these issues will be resolved. Further, for the Great Crossing, like I said, we still and fully.
Thank
you. Commissioner Lamone.
Thank you. Pete, there were some comments about Chinatown's involvement as a traffic court being available in April.
Anything like that,
to the process board.
Yeah. So for last months, there's been a working group. Term to focus on those issues, in particular the transportation management plan discussing. So in addition to the trip reduction and the measures that are being looked at the railroad, it was all often change. Who would have thought about scooters 20 years ago. So all of these things in mind, and it's that document updated and re-advised, the project approval, and probably again prior to issuance of a building permit, and possibly even again before opening day, and really to keep up with everything and to be able to modify the document and shift needed. So there where we have a lot of traffic out, we don't really need to take away from those modes shifted. So now we need a traffic control officer. So all of those things are anticipated within that transportation management plan and service that are not CEQA matters, but looking at forming what P can provide and advise areas within China.
Commissioner Rank.
My commissioners have taken all of my. Before I ask a couple of questions, I wanted to reinforce, Pete, what something said in response to Commissioner or Vice Chair Fern. And unavoidable for the. There's this extra jurisdictional authority. So while it's this long list of significant nuances of CEQA that the agency has to declare that it's significant, unavoidable, control the outcome. So I just wanted to kind of reinforce it out, Vice Chair. While we heard one of the a bunch the truck relocation placement. So if you could talk a little bit about that staff had any kind of position. The
we had talked about that there could be increased VMT. It is correct. We did speculate where all these trucks would move to. It's CEQA does speculation. What we did do when we analyzed relocation is that, we've been working with the port. So we've been talking with them about what potential location could go. Different properties within, was the one that, from a service standpoint as well, to identify what the greatest level of air quality impacts would be for this area, because those would have the closest sensitive. So again, a lot of the times when we're doing analysis scenario, so that we can, fully transparent about what the there are WOCAP measures that have been put in place. The cities are preventing trucks from moving historically, and that's acknowledged. Anything else on the?
No, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, and then with regard to Oakland Heritage Alliance's comments on the mitigation, when the language should to shall, in my opinion, is not that big of a difference. Talking about something from a set of design may make a difference. We're talking about and there's not an option to say something that they would like to see change.
To me, is this, and the documents really intend term about the priority of industrial port use versus a sports village. And thing that's not clear to me, even in specificity, maybe the purview of the council in terms of that, how do the dual priorities as a result of the retention of industrial uses, the creation of associated
freeways, punch through a neighborhood, or something really like does create a physical site connected. But it sits between the middle of London Square, and it's not integrally connected into all those other streets. So we did an argument for the E.I.R process is what issues could come with use on activities. There are a number of in there that were raised about safety. There's actually enforce the channel regulations. So, there's always been concerns about kayaks sort of sitting out how they do with Oracle. One, if balls were hit into here, it'd be pretty more close to 1,000 feet. But none the concern of the kayaks coming just because their activity is happening there. So also have sort of like place to soften the edge. Also on the west end of the project. As about complaints, air quality, and then a lot of the transportation analysis was also done to relieve a lot of the issues too, with trucks coming in and out as well.
So let me just sort of follow up. So thanks for that starter on that. The companion part of that is, I guess, what I would describe as the scale of the proposed project under maximum CEQA analysis versus alternative, which is an encroachment in the turning basin option. And what I've sort of read as a layperson is the importance of the port, the revenue generation of the port, the time during this COVID where supply chains are really being challenged and stuff like that. And I guess I sort of wonder about that chunk that would put the turning basin alternative versus a sort of given as a the primary project. So maybe you could talk about that relative. I realize the project sponsor just that, and we looked at the alternative, but the balance in my mind is also about ensuring that both to your what you described, both the industrial and the sports village based side. So can you share light on that?
Yes. Earlier, the maritime reservation scenario is not the turning basin. The purpose of the reservation scenario is to look at what impacts may be different from the baseline project in the event that the maximum is taken out site of the term sheet with currently with the port. What the maritime reservation scenario is the maximum area that the port could take back. And what would that be in the was that basin as proposed now is something closer like 1 to 3 acres potentially coming out of the site and not 10. This is still just in the early feasibility studies. Not saying we're going to have turning plan B. And then we studied the impacts that would be as well. So it's fully covered in the E.I.R.
I guess I will just sort of say it's not really clear where the port is in this. Really follow what the dialogue has been on that. So thank you for the clarity. Other commissioners?
Thanks, Chair. I just have one of the speakers raised the issue of why the port is sort of retaining or off. I just thought I'd ask that follow up.
I cannot thinking drafted the term sheet.
Fair enough.
Vice Chair Fern.
Question came to mind about did the analysis occur sequel, and I was just wondering if that's in fact the case.
Yeah, so what AB 730 requires, it actually community benefit. In fact, the community benefit will likely be part of the development agreement of the city or the port agreement. Actually move forward.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, let's see if we can put together our thoughts on the direction that we want to provide. I will just sort of my initial thought here just very quickly is that I'm very happy with a lot of testimony. My notes are people, many people support. I appreciate those people in support, but keep in mind what we really are trying to do is for the council is gather all of the information associated with their. In this case, those of you who are commission junkies, this is a unique situation where the commission does not have any action relative to the certification of this. Trying to do is assemble items that perhaps missing in this package for the council. The other thing is I want to sort of go back to where we started this meeting, and I know there was a certain amount of people who were urging us to continue this item. One of the parts of this is to be able to continue to read the document, provide the comments to the council, because they will be the ones ultimately making the determination on the certification of this document. So the abundance of information, I think, is critical. So I will sort of pause with that, and I will ask my fellow commissioners to give their thoughts on what our perhaps roadmap is on this item.
I can jump in just a little bit.
Go.
I think very 100 people in the middle of the afternoon Wednesday. Pretty impressive. And I know this is a huge project. It's very important for the entire, honestly, the entire region, one way or the other. And I really appreciate seeing this many people out and giving us all this valuable input. So I just want to acknowledge that. And then for staff, this has been, I know this has been a very lengthy and analysis. And I will agree that, you know, I spent about 4 years in state CEQA office. This is the more thorough CEQA EIRs I've seen. There's still a lot of issues. There's still a lot of things that need to be resolved. There's still a lot of concern, huge change for the city and for that local area in particular. I encourage the community to keep working with everyone, with the community, to make sure that the vision of serving the community needs and the greater Oakland needs implemented in the next steps of this process as it moves, if it moves forward. Overall, I think that I don't to advance this to City Council. I again understand all the concerns. I think within the confines and the constraints of CEQA and of the EIR, all of the things that are directly related to that have been addressed, and I think it's ready to move forward with all of the great work that's been done. So I'll just pause there.
Thank you, Commissioner Shwezi. Commissioner Segru.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I really want to commend the amount of effort that has gone into organizing the responses. And I think this is probably one of the best consolidated responses in an EIR I've seen in terms of addressing the amount of comments that we received initially on the draft environmental impact report. And I think a lot of those comments raised completely fair concerns. And I think I went into the FEIR and the responses really with those same concerns. And I think there were several I was kind of taken back, like, wow, that is an effective solution. And it does effectively mitigate things. Think about something around where I had initial concerns around the rail. I think, and looking at what other stadiums have done, looking over at San Francisco, increasing traffic patrol in that area, given game time, makes so much sense. And so I know for me, in reading each of the responses, it was a lot easier to digest because of the consolidation that staff did. So I just want to commend them on that. And I'm with Commissioner forward to council.
Thank you, Commissioner Segru. Commissioner Lamone.
Yeah, no, I'd like to echo Commissioner Segru's same sentiments. Organization and the consolidation that was very, very well done, and it really highlighted the public participation and heard and addressed. You know, obviously there are some. It's not that clearly conveyed is there's a lot out of the city's purview, and it requires additional agency reviews and approvals. So I think, over time it will get fleshed out. And to Commissioner Sherwood, there's still a lot of opportunities for them to participate in this process and to continue to play a role. And I just encourage everyone to continue to participate and make this a really good project that works for everyone if it does move forward. So, thank you.
Great, thank you. Vice Chair Fern or Commissioner Rank, did you have a quick question?
No, I mean, if Vice Chair wants to go, that's fine.
Okay. Vice Chair Fern, please.
You can go, Commissioner Rank. You can go. That's fine.
I couldn't agree more with my fellow commissioners. And kudos to staff and the entire environmental team. This was a huge kind of public engagement is what makes projects like this document responded, I think, very meaningfully to a lot of the comments that were raised. To Commissioner Lamone's point, CEQA doesn't portend to be perfect, but I think this was a really good effort that enhanced mitigation measures. To Pete's point, maybe the staff report, I mean, it added 300 pages of sort of amplified information that I think is extremely meaningful to those who commented. And so, the sort of analysis, the additions to the mitigation measures, I think should all be recognized here in terms of how this process, I think. So I would also support moving this forward. And I agree that this is not the end of the mission. There's a lot more work to do. And the council will have to take up some of the feasibility questions that I think have been raised today. And so they'll have findings and consider the statement of overriding considerations, but the certification findings under CEQA. So I'd be ready to move forward. And I'd be happy to make unless anyone wants to go.
Just hang in there, Commissioner Rank. Thoughts?
I'm not going for what has been almost 4 hours now, and I just want to echo that I think at the end of the day this will be a better project for it. I also want to commend Pete and ESA and staff just on their preparation for this as well, and being prepared to answer what was a wide-ranging amount of questions about this very, very complicated project. And to the point Commissioner Rank said about CEQA working, I also think this really shows the limitations of CEQA. I mean, I think there are valid concerns out there that just simply aren't under the purview of CEQA, that don't make them not valid and don't make them not worthy of being actually resolved. And I think to that point, there is time for that. I think even if council were to certify the EIR, I'm not saying they will, it's not going to allow that project to move forward or a shovel to be put into a ground until there is a lot more input and a lot more granular analysis about what actually is going to happen out in the field. So I just want to make that underscore that. I also want to underscore the fact that today we certainly are not approving the project. I think all the commissioners up here still have questions about what the ultimate project is going to look like, and ultimate solutions are going to be, and we will have at those key times. But I agree with the commissioners in terms of the document itself and it highlighting the actual impacts that will arise as it relates to this project. I think the document has done that successfully, and I too would move to move this forward to council.
Perfect. Thank you, Vice Chair. And I can only say that the comments of my fellow commissioners are obviously right on. A huge thank you to staff. This is and a lot of effort, and Pete, you are our primary interface, and again, you've done an amazing job keeping your wits about you and basically trying to compile stuff in this document. Yeah, CEQA, I think, commissioners said it's not always a pretty picture here. It analyzes a lot of things. I think, we've all said, and we've heard a lot of testimony today on things that we believe are need to be refined, need to be provided more input. Vice Chair Fern echoed something that I continue to sort of feel is that we do not have a project before us. This commission, in terms of those who have served on it, have been instrumental in helping to find the sweet spot for projects amongst the myriad of conflicts that occur between the community and land use and stuff like that. And we've always tried to think about that. So that will be something that will happen after the council deliberates on this and takes action on the environmental document. So there will be a lot of future conversations as a result of it. So I feel very similar to my fellow commissioners. So with that, Commissioner Rank, can I turn back to you and your suggestions on how we might proceed?
Sure. Based on the whole of the record before us and the testimony that we've heard today, and in accordance with CEQA, I would move that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council certify the EIR based on the following findings. That the EIR has been completed in compliance with CEQA, the CEQA guidelines, and the city CEQA procedures. We have independently reviewed and considered the record and EIR prior to making this recommendation to certify the EIR. The EIR represents the independent judgment, review, and analysis of the city and the Planning Commission. It provides information to the decision makers and the public on the environmental consequences of the proposed project, and it adequately discusses the potential adverse environmental effects, ways in which such effects might be mitigated, and alternatives to the project which would reduce or avoid the adverse effect.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, did I hear a second?
Yeah, Shirazi.
Commissioner Shirazi.
Thank you. Okay, and then the roll would be Commissioner Shirazi,
Yes.
Commissioner Lamone,
Yes.
Commissioner Sugrue,
Yes.
Commissioner Rank,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fern,
Yes.
and Chair Manis.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously, and this recommendation will be forwarded to the City Council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for attending. And Mr. Cavall, if you're on here, I think you have work to do. So you don't need to respond. So thank you, everybody, for your participation. So Secretary Payne, we have no appeals.
That is correct. No appeals this evening.
And it looks like we have an approval of the meeting minutes of January 12th, 2022 on our agenda.
Yes, you do. And I believe everybody was in attendance. Desmona, can you confirm?
That is correct. Everyone was there.
So everybody can vote. All we need is a motion.
Okay, I move to approve.
Second.
Sorry, was that Lamone and then Sugrue?
Sugrue?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And the roll is Commissioner Shirazi,
Yes.
Commissioner Lamone,
Yes.
Commissioner Sugrue,
Yes.
and Commissioner Rank,
Yes.
Commissioner Fern,
Yes.
and Commissioner Manis.
Yes.
Motion passes. Minutes from January 12th, 2022 are approved and will be posted to the website shortly.
Great, terrific. Okay. Any correspondence as a part of commission business?
No correspondence to the secretary.
And city council actions. I know we probably have one or two items that are percolating that you always provide us update on. Any city council actions to be aware of?
I am going to warn our attorney, Brian, that I had told him that I did not want to provide updates this evening, thinking that we were going to go really late, but we have discussed some updates. So the ADU legislation went to second reading last night and passed. and it will be effective 30 days from adoption. So 30 days from yesterday. That would be in the middle of February. And the council did make one change. They increased the allowable height for ADUs in single family zones from 18 feet to 20 feet. And that's the only update I have.
Terrific. The only thing I would add to that, Secretary Payne, is two things that I saw. One was a survey in San Francisco of where ADUs are being built, which I thought was interesting. And it would be interesting to understand that for Oakland, considering the way we've moved forward on this. And I understand UC Berkeley is also, I guess, undertaking a study on ADUs in, I believe, high fire zones. Commissioner Shirazi, you aware of the specifics of that? I just saw a feed on that.
Sorry, no, I was just, no.
Okay. So, Vice Chair Fern, you got your hand up.
Yeah, just had a question. Is there going to be, I'm just curious what the status is of the downtown specific plan. I just hadn't heard about that for quite some time, and just curious.
Good question.
Was or when it will appear in front of us.
I believe the zoning will be coming to you this year, but I don't have any more specifics than that. I'll bring back more specifics at our next meeting.
That'd be great. Thank you.
So Secretary, to Vice Chair's question, you'll give us a little roadmap to what we'll be seeing in 2022. Generally, I know you've given us an update on that. And as I remember, on February 2nd, is that the next hearing, we will have a workshop on the housing element. Am I correct?
That's correct. Yes. And I can provide an updated high-level overview of what you'll be seeing over the next quarter at our next meeting as well.
Okay, and I will just share with my fellow commissioners as I get briefings from Secretary Payne on the agenda and stuff like that. I will sort of reinforce that staff works very hard. They're working exceptionally hard, sort of not as fully staffed as they could be. So one of the things that I think we want to try and help them balance perhaps is what we see as perhaps priority things that the city of Oakland in our commission responsibility can provide insight on. So so Secretary Payne, hopefully that'll help a little bit, but I know you guys are collectively trying to deal with the myriad of requests and velocity on projects of various types.
Thank you for recognizing that.
Okay, we do. We certainly do. And Ms. Armstrong, as always, great steward on our Zoom. You are a master. So again, I can't thank you enough. We had a little glitch there, just trying to figure out what was happening in the mail, but I think we recovered, and I think we did a good job on our public service. So with that, if there's nothing else from anybody else, we will adjourn this meeting at 7 p.m.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Good night. Take care.